Everybody, to the virtual meeting of the Board of Finance budget hearing, April 16th. We will call the meeting to order. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Liberty and justice for all.
Okay, just want to, my name is Jim Brown, Chairman of the Board of Finance. For the public, if you did call in to listen, just a reminder, you will not be heard by the board members, and there will be no live public comment. The public is encouraged to send their comments before or after the meeting to the following email, bof@fairfieldct.org. Okay, so tonight we are going to discuss on the miscellaneous side, the nonprofit side, Pequot Library, and then we'll go to Culture and Recreation, and then we'll go to Finance. So we'll start with the Pequot Library, and we have Executive Director Ms. Stephanie Coakley here with us, and she has other board members, including the Finance Director of the library. So if we can start with the introduction, and Ms. Coakley, if you could just give us a brief comments about Pequot, anything you would like us to hear that you think is relevant for us to discuss tonight, and then we'll ask a few questions and we will go from there. But I want to welcome Pequot Library and everyone that's here representing them. And Ms. Coakley, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so very much. We're honored to be here with you all this evening. First Selectwoman Kupchik, Board of Finance members, I really appreciate you were inviting us to this evening's budget hearings. And as mentioned, I'm Stephanie Coakley, Director of Pequot Library, and I'm joined by our Board President, Sean Kelly, our Board Treasurer, Doug Freed, also a recent Fairfielder of the Year, and our Finance Manager, John Gleckler, looks like to be on the call. So I want to thank all of them for joining me this evening. And if I may, I do have a brief bit to share with you all. Most of all, on behalf of all of Fairfield residents, I want to thank the town and taxpayers for helping to support Pequot Library's work since 1923. We remain incredibly grateful, and we need this continued support today more than ever. And in fact, I'm so pleased to share a selection of the comments we've recently received from patrons from a survey we sent out earlier this week. Among other questions we asked, what do you value about Pequot Library? And we heard back everything. I've been a loving patron since high school. You're everything a library should be. Another person commented, all the incredible social events that engage and enhance our community. Pequot adds such intellectual, energetic, and beautiful presence to our community. Pequot's a concert hall, community meeting space, a children's library, outdoor gathering space, used books retailer. We offer high school and college internships, as well as volunteer opportunities for countless members of Fairfield's older adults community. We're an exhibition venue. This coming year, we'll host scholars as part of the new Dillon Fellowship Program, helping to expand our knowledge of our special collections materials and make them so ever more accessible. To make all of this happen, Pequot Library must raise over $1 million next year to keep our doors open and continue to provide the free programs that Fairfield residents love. I'm proud to say we outrank the statewide median for the number of library programs offered each year. We outrank the attendance, the size of our circulating collections. The statewide median for program attendance in the last state report was 7,500. Pequot hosted over 37,000 people for education programs last year. And I'm sure you all caught the Gallup poll this last January, indicating that more people visit libraries. and sporting events and zoos. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I think what needs to happen is everyone should go on mute, except for Ms. Coakley. Maybe that will help.
Sorry all for the feedback. How's that?
Much better.
Since 2015, we've welcomed nearly 6,000 school-age visitors in the form of school field trips. We deliver professional development opportunities to Fairfield Public Schools, and I'm especially proud of the work that our education coordinator has done to provide learning projects to local parents and teachers during these trying times when our schools are closed. Maybe some of you don't know that we work with students and teachers from Ludlow, Ward High School, Ludlow Middle, McKinley Elementary, Riverfield School, Fairfield Alternative, St. Thomas Catholic School, area preschools, and Fairfield Prep. Recently, students have learned about Egypt, William Shakespeare, and local Native American history. We offer free educational resources available on our website about analyzing photographs, poetry, both world wars, George Washington and the American Revolution, and the history of the book. And our continuing education for adults with our partners at Fairfield U and the Quick Center has reached over 120 people in this last year, and that's our first year. And speaking of community partners, and I see that my counterpart, Dr. Murtha, has joined the call. Our complementary partnership with Fairfield Public Library and Woods is stronger than ever, as seen through our collaborative summer reading program, our One Book, One Town, and of course, our shared cataloging system, which allows Fairfield residents to conveniently check out and return books at all three libraries. Pequot's fiscally conservative and responsible as we manage our expenses, a challenging task at times considering that we don't always know what our annual income will be. We greatly depend on critical town support, and we work tirelessly to leverage that amount to raise much needed funds. And of course, we do that in the form of individual donations, grant writing, and organizing special event fundraisers. And during this health crisis, Pequot Library is currently experiencing crushing conditions that are threatening our financial stability and forcing us to cancel or postpone vital fundraisers. We are a library to be proud of. I hope you agree, Pequot was here before the Model T, motion pictures, radio, antibiotics. It survived World War I, the 1918 influenza, the stock market crash, Great Depression, and thanks to town support, it will survive this great recession. And I hope you join me as a Fairfield resident myself in believing that Pequot Library Association contributes invaluably to making Fairfield the exceptional place that it is. So with that, I really thank you again for inviting us to this evening, and I look forward to questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Coakley. Would any other representative, before we turn it over to the board, like to make a comment at this point? Oh.
This is Doug Freed. I'm the treasurer of the library, a trustee and a volunteer. I just want to say that we've had steady contributions from the town. This hasn't changed in nominal terms since for the last 12 years, I believe. And in that time, the library programs have grown. The money that we've raised apart from the town has grown, but we've always counted on on the same amount from the town each year.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Freed. Just for the public, Pequot is in the first select board's proposed budget on page 110, and the contribution from the town is $350,000 requested, which has remained the same. I mean, this book only goes back to fiscal year 17. So, Ms. Coakley or Mr. Freed, do you know how long the town has been supporting Pequot?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, that fun fact, 1923, I look forward to celebrating our 100-year anniversary together. And funding has been level at that amount since 2009. It was
Okay, thank you very
reduced back then, approximately $25,000 or so. I'd have to look that up.
Thank you very much. So at this point, I'll turn it over to the board for questions. Ms. Marmion?
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you to the board members who came out tonight. Really appreciate it. I'm curious in terms of looking at what's going on with the pandemic. Has your board had conversations in terms of what you might do to reduce costs during this time? I know you have a healthy endowment, and I know that unfortunately some of your very important fundraisers have had to be curtailed, given that we can't have them. So what kind of conversations have you been having that would help this board understand where you are and where you might go in terms of accessing funds from your endowment, hiring freezes, anything that you might be doing to cut your expenses during this time?
I'll jump in again. This is Doug Freed. We have the immediate fundraisers, which is either canceled or postponed, account for approximately $200,000, and we're looking for innovative ways to keep them intact. We also expect to have a hit from contributions, as everyone is suffering from this. So we realize that our revenues are going to be down. We've been in the past operating on 4% draw from our endowment to supplement our other fundraising. The endowment has taken a hit as well. It's a relatively conservatively managed endowment, but I would say we've probably lost something like 15% since the start of the pandemic, less than the hit on the market. And actually, that was before last week, maybe down only 10%. But we're aware of what's going on. Stephanie has been very creative in terms of establishing programs, working with our current staff, which has taken a long time to get. I've been a volunteer for the library since moving to town in 1990, so almost 30 years. And I can tell you that as a resident and live down the street from the library, the staff that we've assembled in the last few years is outstanding. It would be hard to think about losing any of them, but I think there are some part-time people that are on furlough or will be on furlough when the funds run out from the CARES loan that we've applied for. Maybe John knows what the status of that loan application through People's Bank is. So we've applied for that. There's a $10,000 grant that we've also applied for, but that basically keeps us going through the end of May. We're looking at some innovative ideas that we can, one of our biggest fundraisers, I guess the biggest fundraiser we have, is the book sale, which attracts about 10,000 people to the town. We are trying to conceive of ideas, and maybe it's premature to discuss this, but I'll do it anyway. We're thinking that we can arrange a program where we can, we've always given approximately $30,000 worth of books to teachers in neighboring towns, particularly Bridgeport and New Haven, in public schools who need books. We have a foundation that provides us that support. We're thinking of doing something similar. We have approximately 60,000 books in storage already for the book sale, and I don't see any way that we can have a conventional book sale and maintain any sort of social distancing. Even if social distancing rules are eased by the CDC, it still is going to be much too close to have a conventional sale. So we're thinking of ways where we can just give away those books heroes in our town, first responders to delivery people to grocery workers. And we're trying to think that through, how we can make that work. We're looking at ways of providing books to the town. We're looking at ways that we could deliver books to people, to elderly who need them, from our own collection or from books that have already been donated. And then there are the regular programs. We have reading programs for kids. Stephanie, maybe you want to go into the full range of what we're offering in terms of services until we can reopen.
Doug, thank you. Thank you so much, Doug. I would add, we have pivoted to this virtual programming realm, and I'm proud to say it's being extremely well received. We're hearing that people miss the library, of course, but they are enjoying our virtual content. And I would reply, if I may, Mrs. Marmion, that our budget is very much lean to begin with, as you know, and it has been. And whereas I and the board and the community should be extremely grateful for an endowment, it's a modest endowment for sure. And as you mentioned, there are hiring freezes in place. We're down a full-time public programs manager. To address your question about how we're moving forward, I would say that we are working so very hard to engage with our individual donors, to wrap up the end of this fiscal year's annual appeal, hopefully with an excess of what we've normally received at this time. And we're also reaching out to our family foundations and government foundations that have supported Pequot. We are seeking new funding and additional funding from Fairfield County Community Foundation, and I assure you we are exhausting the possibilities as far as what might be available to an arts and culture organization such as Pequot during this time.
Thank you. Have you considered, because it is a unique partnership with the town. It's a private-public partnership. It's been very successful, and Pequot gives so much in terms of what it delivers to the town. Have you had discussions in terms of potential cuts from the town? We have asked different department heads to come to us, and if, for example, we were to say, 5% cut, where would this come from? Have you had those discussions with your board? And,
absolutely.
And is this something that you would proactively come to us and say, this partnership is so important to us and you've supported us for many, many years, and this is what we as an institution would be able to kind of give back to the town? Have you had that conversation?
We have, absolutely, and I look forward to continuing that conversation with our board and our staff and our peers at the two other libraries. I would say that I understand that the decisions in front of the Board of Finance are challenging, to say the least, no doubt. And I thank you for the work that you're doing on behalf of the town. I would like to invite our finance manager, John Gleckler, to address the question about possible cuts to Pequot Library's allocation. Before I turn it over to John, though, I would remind you all respectfully that our budget has increased each year, of course, and we're doing more than ever with the most generous amount from taxpayers. And so with that, John, do you want to add anything?
Yes, Stephanie, thank you. This is John Gleckler, a finance manager for Pequot Library. With that question about have we thought about cuts for the town, we actually think about that every year when we go through our operating budget. Knowing that the town really didn't have a lot of additional resources for us, we've always tried to manage our budget with that $350,000 at a level that stays the same. In fact, if you look at historically, the town funding of $350 represented about 30% of our budget in 2016. it's gone down now to 2021 to little over 21%. So we've had a lot of growth in expenses, mostly in employee benefit costs. In 2021, we're going to be challenged with more increase in benefit costs. We're also challenged by the minimum wage increase. Everybody knows the minimum wage is going up about another 9% on September 1st. That is going to be a challenge for us with our team. Some of our team are low-paying people. They're going to be compressed with that minimum wage. We also have issues with our contracted staff, like housekeeping. Those costs are going to go up 9-10%. So with that every year challenging, we keep looking for additional funding from the public support outside of the town to offset that budget increase. So next year, we're projecting our base cost to go up about 5%. Yet, again, the town funding would stay just at that $350. If that number is cut any more, it is going to be a challenge for the library. I'm not saying it's an impossible challenge, but it's really going to be a tough challenge, especially with what we see is going to be increased costs related to the virus, offset by compound by decrease in revenues.
Okay, thank you.
I would
You're
add,
welcome.
if I may, the worst case scenario, if I may add, what troubles me is that ultimately a cut to Pequot means a direct cut to our services and perhaps even a significant reduction in our hours that we're open to the public.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Marmion. Any other questions from the board? Mr. DeWitt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris DeWitt. Ms. Copley, of your approximate $1.3 million budget, how much of that is in new material acquisition?
This is Joe Blecker again. It's about $65,000.
65,000.
That's
And
correct.
it is worth noting that we have an acquisition materials in the main library for an amount that I don't have right in front of me, and then an amount of acquisition of materials in the Woods Library that are all accessible through the Pequot Library. That's correct, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes,
Great.
it's an
Thank you.
exchange that goes both ways for sure.
Yeah, well, and I mean, fair point, right? You can go to the main library in town and take out a book that was acquired under your $65,000 of Pequot money. So, fair point. Thank you very much.
One of
Thank
our
you, Mr.
comments in the survey. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, Ms. Copley, was that you? Please continue.
I was just going to mention that I read this week as part of the survey report, people are so pleased at how much our collections complement one another that we can often find books at Pequot that you can't find at the other libraries and vice versa.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Other questions from our board?
Mr. Brown, I'd like to say and ask a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Walsh.
Okay. First, I'd like to thank the board members for being present, and the comments were made by everyone. I mean, I think obviously you have provided an invaluable source and have done so historically for this town since you were formed. You're basically an institution in this town and act as a third library in town. So I'm not going to get into all that, but it seems to me that what's going on right now, like happening to a lot of businesses, but especially yours in a way, because you do rely on endowment money. And as you said, your endowment value of your endowment's down approximately 15% on market. And then you're looking at other increases in expenses. You seem to be particularly hit by this COVID-19 crisis that's kind of going on right now. not unlike many other businesses, but, you know, you're kind of getting hit on all sides, on your revenue side, on your investment side, and on your expense side, all at the same time. And I think you laid out a pretty good case in Scopely, how you and the board are trying to work through those problems in a very actually business-like way, like a private business would work through, and cutting stuff, applying for some of the federal money that's available, and having meetings constantly on what you can move online to still provide services to the citizens of this town. So do you have any idea what your revenue, do you have any projections on what your revenue might be cut because of, you know, changes in your endowment or things like that going forward for this year? And I'm going to talk about the money that you're not getting from your fundraisers. But do you think that your investment money is going to be going down?
This is John Gleck again, as finance manager. Sure, our investment income will go down, but we've been very prudent with our draws from our endowment. We've constantly only drew down about 4 to 5% of that endowment. So we kind of smoothed that endowment drawer over the years of good years and bad years. So we think we could, if we continue just at 4 or 5% draw on our endowment, we could outweigh this period of time, and hopefully the markets will rebound next year or the year after. And then on an average, be that 4 or 5%.
And you said you're down $200,000 on fundraisers you plan to have or normally do have in a current year that you've had to cancel.
That's correct. And we think under the CARES Act with the PPP, the payroll protection plan, with our employees in that we'll get in about $120,000 is what we're thinking will be forgiven over the next 2 months.
Okay. And how much do you guys normally make? I know you said your largest fundraiser is the book sale. I mean, just say that book sale. I mean, it's one of the biggest events of this town, and it's really disheartening to believe that might actually have to be canceled. Is that something that, if it passes, you can have later on in the year, or you just will not have later on in the year?
This is Doug Freed again. I have the responsibility to. I've been running the book sale for the last 19 years, essentially. We'd love to have it whenever it's possible, and we have 100 volunteers that send me emails pretty much every day. When can we get back to working on this? But first and foremost is the health of the community, and we're not going to jeopardize that. So we're trying. I think the first step would be that we could figure out a system to leverage the grant that we have from a local foundation to get books to teachers in the area. And that we would do by having a smaller tent and have it by invitation only. And then we were thinking of having the same thing again for people that have been hard hit by this virus, to give away a lot of the books that we're giving. And we have tentative commitments from several donors already to help make up the revenue if we go ahead with that program, so that instead of selling it to the public, we give away the books to those who need it the most. To me, that's a sort of a win-win situation. It makes our donors feel good about what we're doing. I think everyone is looking. I think times like this makes the community get much closer. So I think we can fund the loss of revenues with this. I think we can probably. We have books coming in. We probably get 200 to 250 books a day that are donated to us. Actually, more than that, probably 500, of which 200 to 250 we put in the book sale. So we will have a steady stream of new supply. The only issue is, when is it going to be safe to hold a book sale? And I think we could do what local businesses are doing, what the grocery stores are doing, and limiting crowds by having someone monitor to make sure there aren't that many people in the tent at one time. But I tend to be somewhat, I tend to look at the downside more than the upside. I think that this virus will put a crimp in having any book sale the way we have come to know it, at least through the summer. Maybe we could have it late in August if things return to normal. But I think that's a best case scenario. So we're looking at ways to utilize our existing inventory of donated books to get them into the hands of the people who need them, and to make up the funding by saying that we're going through this, we're giving up our revenues from most of the book sale, and I think we've already covered at least 50% of the lost revenues by special donations from the town, from local residents. So I think that will work, but we want to keep something going. We were planning, this is the 60th, this would have been the 60th anniversary of the first sale, or the 60th sale, started in 1961. And we were planning to have a special celebration for that. That isn't going to happen. But, you know, I think there are a lot of events that have been postponed, and we can live with that. We want to keep our staff and our patrons safe. So we will be ready to go. It won't take us long to get going if conditions permit. But in the meantime, we're making contingency plans to make up those revenues. We've postponed one of our other big fundraisers till September. We have the art show coming up in October. We don't know whether that's going to take place. Maybe it will. I think there's a good chance we can figure something out by then. But
Doug, can I add one thing too? Just to clarify, when we talked about the $200,000 loss in revenues, it was really $260,000 that Doug's talking about. The library had also looked at all their expenses, like Tiffany mentioned, and held a freeze on any open positions. We've cut some expenses. We worked with some of our vendors to reduce expenses. So we reduced expenses by about 5% also in the next 3 months, for about the total of about $60,000. So that's a net of $200,000 that we're talking.
there's one other thing.
I hope you all see, Doug, I hope you all see how enthusiastic our board members are and how much they're so very passionate about the library. I very much am seriously concerned about the loss of our book sale this summer. We have a small but mighty core of individual donors, but that too is sorely an underestimation. And I applaud Doug. I tend to be a little bit more of a prepared for the worst case scenario, and I am, as we all are, and Doug is too, very concerned about the future of the library, considering the loss of our 60th annual book sale, and very likely that's to happen. Doug, I know you had something else to add.
That's basically, I was just going to point out that the revenue loss is over. Our fiscal year goes through June 30th, and some of these events have taken place in this fiscal year and some are in the next fiscal year. But I think the $200,000 to $260,000 loss in revenue would be basically corresponding to the calendar year and going forward with the overlap, some of it falling in this current fiscal year and some falling to the next. And then beyond that, I think no one really knows how long this is going to go on. So we're meeting every 2 weeks to make contingency plans and revise those contingency plans as more information becomes available. But that's all we can do right now.
Oh, yeah, you seem to be doing a lot of planning about it. I mean, that's quite evident, which I think is great. And we all have to do contingency planning, including the town. And but I think you've laid out a strong case on why you're funding it. At this point would be a horrible thing to do. But I appreciate you know, all the knowledge and things you're able to give us and all the background about your financial troubles. So that's it. I think you guys do great work. I wish you the best of luck and Godspeed with all of this. Because I think you're right, Mr. Freed. even if you have the sale of something in some form, the psychological damage done to people based on this virus, there's just people are not going to come out to crowded spots or even relatively crowded spots because they may be older, they may have medical conditions, and they're going to be afraid to come. I don't care whether you have that in July, August, September, October, November. It's going to take a year to heal for you to get a full population who wants to come back. I think you'll get less people than you even think you'll get. So
that's true. I just want to add again this idea that we're kicking around right now, and it's really been talked about only for a few days, but the idea we can also marshal some younger people to help deliver books. We can maybe put together an inventory of what we have and then give them to people that wouldn't, especially the elderly that can't come out, that are concerned, the people who are in the high risk categories of for the virus. I think we wanted, our mission is to serve the community, and we have to be a bit creative and adaptive to the current conditions. So we'll figure something out. We have, Stephanie organized a survey which was sent out earlier this week. We had several hundred people already respond about things they would like to see, ways we can help them, and we're trying to figure out how we can do that, because we've had dozens of volunteers contact us and say, how can we help? They want to do something. They can't physically go into the library, but there are things we can figure out, and working with one volunteer at a time so that we don't risk infection. We are very adaptable. And in terms of your questions about what would a reduction in funding do, well, we're braced for, reduction in revenues, reduction in return on the endowment. We're doing what we can, and every dollar that we get is crucially important to us. But I know the whole town is going through that, so we're part of what's going on, and you have very difficult decisions to make on your side, how to balance all of that in very uncertain terms. So we may have it kind of easy relative to you, where you're dealing with so many different organizations, and everyone has needs, and we realize that. So we're willing to partner with the town as best as we can, and if you have ideas as to what we can do to help the community, we'd love to hear them.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your comments. Are there any other questions from the board for Pequot Library? Okay, seeing none, I want to thank you all again for being here tonight and wish you the best of luck. And, I'm sure we'll be in contact one way or another as this process goes on. So we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you again for your work on behalf of all of us, and
Yes.
much appreciated.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Walsh?
can I just make a request? I think it was very valuable having them in, but, number one, I think it's a little unfair we don't have the other nonprofits in here, because as Ms. Marmion said, it's a very tough year. We may need to do other things with all the nonprofits equally. So could we please get all the nonprofits before us tonight? I'm making that.
We can do that, Mr. Walsh. We have 2 meetings. I'll work on that. It's a request from Mr. Walsh. So, Mr. DeWitt, you and I tomorrow will take a look at the rest of the budget hearings. We have basically 2 meetings left where we're meeting with department heads, so we'll have to work that out.
Thank you.
But yeah, we can meet that request. Okay, so moving on to culture and recreation, we are going to move to library. We'll start with the main branch, and That in our budget book starts on page 237 and goes on to page 240. So I would like to welcome our head librarian, Dr. Murtha, and all guests from the main library who will present their budget to us, and then we'll follow up with our questions. So, Dr. Murtha, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. We're going to start tonight. Ms. Sonal Rajan is here, and she's chair of our Board of Trustees, so she's going to start with a statement.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Sonal Rajan, and I'm honored to serve as the chair of the Board of Trustees for the Fairfield Public Library. To the first select woman, members of the Board of Finance, thank you for your time this evening, for your dedicated and tireless service on behalf of our town and its residents, and especially for the ways in which you are serving to ensure the safety and health of our residents during this challenging time. None of us could have ever imagined the impact COVID-19 would have on our society, and because of this global pandemic, even public libraries, the most open and welcoming of public spaces, are temporarily closed. While our physical spaces are closed, the Fairfield Public Library remains virtually open to all. With just a library card, virtual services, entertainment, and content are freely available, offering patrons educational and in-home entertainment opportunities while maintaining social distancing. Fairfield Public Library is what our community needs now more than ever. What the Fairfield Public Library offers is necessary for 21st century learners of all ages. For families, the library serves as a crucial resource where the town's youngest residents, from birth through college, gain important literacy and critical thinking skills, career building skills, computer skills, and collaborative skills. The library truly serves as an extension of the town's well-regarded educational system through its programming and resources, supporting Fairfield's property values and reinforcing the perception that Fairfield is a desirable place to live. For adults of all ages looking to expand their horizons, learn new skills, find a job, volunteer, or just be social, the library plays a vital role in their lives. By definition, public libraries are dynamic, versatile, and welcoming community centers that serve people of every age group in a variety of ways, enhancing knowledge, advancing literacy, offering cultural and community opportunities, and even impacting the economic and workforce development of the area. The Fairfield Public Library is an outstanding, award-winning, and much beloved example of this model. As the governing body of the Library Board of Trustees understands the continuing fiscal constraints and challenges this economic climate imposes on town departments. The board continues to look at how the library preserves and expands its mission in this current economic climate, exploring new technologies, processes, and programs to better respond to the different ways which our town's residents, the library's customers, desire, consume, and share information. Our strategic priorities remain the same: evaluate and enhance the user experience, connect our community to creative learning and use of technology, maximize our physical and virtual space, build community relationships, and advocate on behalf of the library. We realize that the state's continued budget crisis, as well as the current pandemic, has forced town departments to make very difficult decisions. Historically and in practice, the Fairfield Public Library is fiscally responsible with its budget, focusing on getting maximum value for all dollars spent. But like any organization or resource that strives to remain current, the library needs to continue to make investments in order to meet the needs of our residents. It must continue to purchase quality, up-to-date materials such as books, periodicals, and electronic resources, and it must have sufficient qualified staff to assist patrons and maintain the programs and functions of the library. The board respectfully requests, as you work through the town's budget, that the budget of the Fairfield Public Library presented by Dr. Murtha and recommended by the Board of Selectmen be maintained as is. The proposed budget is an increase of $65,000 from last fiscal year, due mostly to the transfer of a supervisory role to the Woods branch, as well as an increase to the materials budget by 2%. The slight increase will allow the library to replace well-used, damaged, and missing books and satisfy the increasing demand for materials in digital format, ultimately adhering to generally acknowledged best practices and benefiting patrons. The Fairfield Public Library provides so much more than just books, and from cradle to grave, it is an essential part of the heart, mind, and soul of our residents. We are grateful to the Board of Finance's continued support and assure you of our commitment to continue to make the Fairfield Public Library integral to what makes Fairfield a unique and desirable place to live, work, and play. Thank you. Dr. Murtha?
Thank you. That was wonderful. We're going to move on to questions then, if you want to, if the Board of Finance would like.
Yes, thank you very much. And, you know, we start off on page 238. Your budget total is minus almost about 2% year over year. I do want to thank our finance department. Ms. Bossi, thank you. We did have a request from the Board of Finance to describe in detail every line item that is increased or decreased by 5% or more from last year's budget. So it looks like we have that, Ms. Bossi, from the main library, from Fairfield Woods, and from Mr. Calabrese's budget. So thank you for that. Mr. Bremer, thank you. So with that said, I'll turn it over to the board for questions. Mr. DeWitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris DeWitt. Ms. Murtha, of the library materials you're requesting to purchase this year, $489,600 for the main library, and $122,400 for Woods. What's the percentage, you know, close enough, right, of electronic media as opposed to physical books?
Hold on one second. Get that in front of me. So we usually, what it looks like for this is 40% goes to print. And then the other will be spent 30% digital, and then the rest is split up between databases, video, audio, and STEAM materials. That's our proposal.
So 30% of the total materials you're buying are as
digital and
Ms. Ranjan, as Ms. Ranjan was commenting about, are accessible today.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
And
Thank
I think through this, whole thing is really what we've been pushing through this horrible pandemic.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Any other questions on the expense side of the main branch of our library? I'm seeing none. Okay. Let's move on to Fairfield Woods, and then we'll go to revenue, which is on page 18. But we'll start with the Fairfield Woods branch, which is on page 241, 242, and 243. So, Dr. Murtha, who will speak to this budget?
Myself.
Please go right ahead.
Again, the budget is conservative as Maine is also. The main increases in expenses are things that we really don't have a choice on. We have ADA accommodations we had to meet that we previously weren't budgeted for. And also the increase, the upgrade to Windows 10 has changed a little bit of the way we can use software. Before you could buy packages and have it for a while. Now people move away, the companies have moved away from perpetual licensing to subscription-based, so that gets a little bit more expensive.
Okay, thank you. Can you just go over with us the regular payroll line that has a 17% increase?
Sure can. The payroll line for the regular payroll, what happened is that traditionally, the two administrators that run the bill, myself and the assistant town librarian, Jan Fisher, the way it usually worked was the town librarian's salary would go under the main library and the deputy town librarian would go under Woods Library. When Ms. Fisher was promoted to assistant town librarian, the salary didn't move over to Woods. So the regular payroll is a little bit wonky between the branch and the main library because they had to move salaries around to the correct place.
So it's not an increase in staff, it's just a transfer.
Yes, it's just a transfer.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Mrs. Charlton?
Thank you. Lori Charlton. I'm not sure who to direct this to, but can you give us just some perspective on what's happening with the libraries today in terms of employees, who's working? Has there been any change in terms of part-time workers, given that the buildings aren't physically open, et cetera? And
Okay,
what impact that's having on the budget for the current fiscal year?
Right. There aren't any part-time workers working right now. They're all furloughed. Right now, I have all the full-time staff working, and while it's been a very rough time, it has been a tremendously exciting time on just seeing the staff figure out ways to change service. They've picked up the ball and they're running with it. Virtual programming is started. Children's programs every 10 a.m. We have children's programs going on. We have virtual book clubs that got started. We're doing a lot on social media. We are assisting. I have CERC staff had assisted with the Friendly Caller program with Human Services. They were helping out with that. We're also trying to do a big push to get more residents to have library cards, making sure we reach out to everyone. So we're doing a lot of investigation, getting involved. We always are involved with the schools, which is our main connection, but getting involved with neighborhood associations, partnering with Parks and Rec on things. Actually, Parks and Rec and ourselves have a joint book club going on. It's called Joan and Claudia's Book Nook. So that's really exciting. We work with the Bigelow Center. So trying to get the word out that there's so much available through the library, and this is a great time for you to use it. We're making it easier for them to get library cards online. And now my staff has taken on the other, we're creating YouTube mini tutorials on how to use all these great things with your devices. We're answering phone calls, we're on the phone, we're doing emails. We're definitely missing that physical connection, but the staff has really risen to the challenge of figuring out ways how to problem solve and get out to people and help them get what they need.
Okay, thank you. I'm actually one of those people who tried a book on tape for the first time from the library recently.
That's great. It is really great.
Yeah, walk around the neighborhood and keep myself occupied and get some exercise. So I have experienced the YouTube videos, try and figure out which app goes on my phone and how to access the material. So thank you for that. I'm sure the community appreciates it. And thank you for the information and the update.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Charlton. Anyone else on the expense side of the Fairfield Woods Library? Okay, seeing none, let's take a look at revenue, which is on page 18 and page 19. So, Dr. Murtha, any comments on the revenue?
You know, we've kind of hashed this out also just listening to Pequot. There's some things like our overdue fines are going to be, of course, less. The room rental fees, of course, will be less. The invested funds payment will stay the same. That's on a schedule. and that's the bulk of what the revenue is. So, yes, being closed will affect these lines.
Will affect them for 2020,
Yes,
for this current budget.
right.
Okay. Okay. Hopefully not for 2021, because hopefully we'll be open by July.
I really hope so. We all hope so.
We all hope so. Okay. Thank you. Any questions on revenue?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Walsh?
Ms. Murtha, thanks for being here. Just on the revenue, you mentioned a couple of your revenue lines. I just want to confirm the library revenue from Kinetic Card, is that going to be affected?
It probably will be, because what that is the state gives us a credit for Connecticut residents that are non-Fairfield residents that come to our library and use their card. We get a credit for how many people use the card. Mm-hmm. So with the library being closed, that's going to drop. I mean, it's March. We will have something, but it will drop. Okay. And the state usually, and also the state year by year keeps chipping away at this.
Have you done any calculations on what you believe the revenue will be going down by?
Not really yet. Because, it's really, I feel we sit and we speak and we still feel, I at least from where we sit, I don't think any of us expected that it was going to go on this long. And now looking back, how could you not expect it to be that way? So I think that part, we're very good looking at the services and trying to help people. I think now this is the next thing we have to look at. I've had a lot of meetings with the Friends of the Library too about fundraising and what's going to happen. So we're kind of tackling that now.
Would it be fair to say that, say we made an assumption on the Board of Finance that you might not be open till August, that we took 1/12 of these numbers, that would be some place to start?
I think so.
Okay. And in regards to the Friends of the Library, how much funding do you get from them? What does that go towards?
They can give it depends on how their fundraising goes, and they can give anywhere up to $40,000. And what that usually goes to is things outside of what the operational budget would pay for. So they'll help out with the One Book, One Town program. We wanted to create a makerspace and have a 3D printer and all those types of things. So they purchased that. And they provide a lot of support for our teen program, the Down Under program at Woods, because we offer a lot of STEM learning things, and the Friends finance that. So things that are kind of special that fall outside what would be regular library materials.
Okay. Do they have an endowment, or is this money they raise every year?
The Friends do not have an endowment. They raise every year.
Okay. So whatever they raise that year, they give to you for programming that's outside of the operational budget?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I have no more further questions in regards to revenue, Mr. Brown.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh. And my apologies, I missed Mr. Bateson. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Bateson, who does have a question on expenses. So Ed, I'll turn it over to you.
I appreciate the discussion on revenue. As opposed to guesstimating 1/12, I think you guys should sit down and take a more scientific look on what you think the hit on revenue might be.
Oh, absolutely.
And Jim, I just want to go back in expenses. Can we get the number of people that have been furloughed and the dollar value of what you expect to save in fiscal year 20?
I would have to get back to you on that, but I can.
No, I know. I know you probably don't have that on hand, but this is an exercise that I think the board would like to see. And are you sure that when I was sitting on the board of selectmen, I could have sworn there was some sort of fund or something, an endowment for the library.
That's with the library board. The library board. He said, did the Friends have an endowment? The Friends don't. There's two different groups.
Okay. Can you get us what you got, the current financial statements on that?
Yep.
Yes, can.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Jim.
You're
All
welcome.
right, thank you.
Well, I must have missed my question then. So you're going to get us a number on what the endowment is?
For the library board, yeah.
Board of Trustees and.
Do you have any idea what it is approximately?
$7 million.
Off Ed, because it has changed quite drastically.
It had been, yeah.
Okay.
So let me get back to you on that.
And can you also advise us that not only this year, but last year as well, for the last 2 years,
Sure.
how much income you've taken off of that to use for the library?
Sure. Yeah.
And what do you use that revenue for?
We use the revenue for things such as, right now, space planning. We also use the revenue for professional training for the staff. We also use it for strategic planning. We are in the process of updating our next strategic plan and building that, and so the consultant that we will use will come from that endowment, the fund.
Okay.
Things that are out operational budget.
Okay. And, Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I just have 2 other questions that I forgot to ask during the presentation that came to me while we were talking about revenue. One of them being on the main library. I know, Ms. Murtha, you said that 40% of your materials are print, 30s digital, and 30s are other databases, videos, and audio, correct?
Yes.
Do you see the digital allocation changing? And Ms. Rajan, you can jump in as well. I mean, I don't know, I presume you guys can talk about this together.
It has been little by little every year sneaking over from the print to the digital. Mm-hmm. And I think it will be very interesting after we go through all this, because I think we're going to see even a bigger surge in digital after this when people, before there, it was more of a preference. I think people are going to become much more comfortable using digital now. So that might have us change a little bit more.
Okay. Do what you're going to say. And I meant to ask this to Pequot people with the book sale. I mean, do you think people are going to be afraid to be able to use books that other people have used because they're going to be concerned about viruses and people touching books? And because you hear this on all over the internet and TV about some people not wanting to touch money. And
I think about it. I lose sleep over it. No, the world, it's an interesting thing, and it's definitely something that I think people are going to think about, and I guess we'll see what happens.
Okay.
I think it is a real consideration, though.
Fair enough. And in regards to Fairfield Woods, I just wanted to talk to you about the building maintenance. It's been staying pretty consistent. What you've been budgeting and I guess spending on building maintenance. It's been in the $13,000 range on buildings and grounds. Mm-hmm. That building's getting older. Are there things that are falling behind there? That building?
There are.
A couple of years ago, we were talking about looking at replacing it, and we had all sorts of tours by the Board of Finance. All the other boards. Right.
Well, what's happening right now is, as Sonal had mentioned before, we're doing space planning, and woods is a big part of that. So the board is paying for that plan to come out. I actually have a space planner, a designer, and architect working now to talk about some things that we might be able to do to get more, to update, especially the lower level, and get more use out of the footprint. And there was plans before all this happened. There's an elevator project that's supposed to get updated that's been kind of in the works for a while, and there is also had been plans to update the bathrooms. So DPW was going to change a lot of the hardware in them. So there have been plans outside of just the budget that we've been able to get people involved to start addressing woods.
But there's an elevator in Fairfield Woods, right? It's handicapped accessible and things like that, correct?
Yes, there is an elevator there. It's been in the plans to just update it.
I thought we'd given money a couple of years ago, not that far back.
Yes, it just never got executed.
Okay, so where's that money now?
I think it's waiting.
Waiting. No money waits. I don't know what waiting means, because once you, the budget year hits, it flows back into the town's general fund, so.
Well, it wasn't in this budget.
Okay, but we had previously budgeted for it in another year, because that was my thought, was that we had budgeted for it. I think I can kind of recall Mrs. DeVonzo, a previous member of our board, come to our board and make an impassioned plea on why we needed the money for that elevator. So I'm kind of confused on why that wasn't spent.
Yeah.
I'll leave it.
That's correct, Mr. Walsh. You're right.
I don't know who wants to step in and answer that question.
Good, Caitlin.
Me.
Hi, hey, Jim
Yes.
Brown. That
talking?
funding came.
Oh.
Sorry. There was a
Thank you, Caitlin.
non-recurring capital in 2019.
Okay. So that was last year?
2019.
Two
It was a non-recurring
years
capital.
ago. 2 years ago. Okay. So the money's still there? Did we bond for that money? What's going on with that?
I don't bond until we've spent it. So we spent some of it, and I believe the first selectwoman said she has a contract in front of her.
I signed off on it about a month ago.
She signed off on it about a month ago,
Or a little
so
over a
it's in the
month.
works.
Okay. So
But it was not a general fund budgeted item. It's in the non-recurring capital.
Okay, thanks for reminding us about that. So if that happens and we do it under non-recurring capital, is there a period of time it has to happen for, or could it be 20 years from now, you say, okay, I want to spend it now?
We have some time limitations due to bond counsel and the timing of when we need to spend in terms of the authorization and our spending. Normally, I mean, the school projects go a little bit quicker than ours. Sometimes ours, like the bridges and everything, take a while. They take, the feds have to come in when they're 80/20s, and it takes a long time to get through those processes. So there are some, we look at this list every year, and I reach out to the Board of Ed, I reach out to the department head, say, what can I close, what can I not close, so that we could, inactivate those accounts as I see them. I would say for the most part, like the Southport, the dredging has been going on for years. So there's just certain projects that take longer than others. I would say the bulk of them, however, I'd say within 2 to 3, maybe 4 years are spent.
Okay. No, you're right. I mean, those bridge projects do go on for, it seems like an eternity while they're getting approvals and state funding and things like that. Would we be able to get maybe a presentation like once a year, or like at least once a year, maybe at our capital planning meeting, on like projects that are still not been completed but we've bonded for, so we at least know where they stand?
Well, again, I don't bond until we've paid.
I guess that I mean the projects that have been authorized but not yet bonded.
Yes. Yeah, I can give you a list of active.
You want a status update in October?
Maybe at our capital planning meeting, just so that we know this kind of project, because we kind of forget about it. I mean, to be quite honest with you, I haven't been in Fairfield Woods maybe in a year and a half. I had presumed that elevator had been put in. It was, I remember the night of that discussion. So that's why I was a little surprised when Ms. Murtha started talking about elevators and whatever. I'm like, wait a minute. So if we could just get some type of just opened or closed or, something like that, just so that they would stay on our mind and we won't be surprised if we drive around town and say, why isn't that done or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not urgent. I mean, if you think you need more time, it doesn't have to be at the capital plan. I'm just thinking that would be a good night to do it quickly.
Well, I normally go through them anyways during my bond issuance and band issuance every year. I look at all the open ones and I reach out and say, hey, what's going on with it and how much money you're going to need. So they are looked at every year. So yeah, that's fine.
I mean, if you find it easier that you do it all at one time that month or whatever that you're normally doing bands, you can, it doesn't have to be at the capital planning meeting. You could just do it all at the same time. Whatever's easiest for you. I'm not trying to create additional work, but I think we should just be advised on what still hasn't been done, but has been approved.
Okay, no, that's not a problem. And I also want to answer, I'm not sure if it was Ed Basin's question or your question regarding, there was about 60 part-timers furloughed for the libraries. I think someone asked for that number. And if I look at their budget now, as of in 2020, and what's not been spent between the main library and the branch, it's about $190,000. So if the library does not use those part-timers before July 1, that savings is incorporated in my fiscal year summary that you received today.
Those are the furloughed positions.
For the library.
For the library, only part-time, yeah.
Yeah, which is good because all those people are making more money than they would make if they worked. With the current
That is
approval by the
correct.
government,
That is correct.
they get an extra $600 a week on top
So
of
we've
their
been
own.
told.
Okay, Mr. Walsh, anything further right now? Okay,
No,
I missed,
I want to thank you for answering my questions, and thank you, Ms. Murtha. Thank you.
okay, Lori, I missed Jack, I guess, for the last 15 minutes, so I want to go to him and then I'll come to you. So, Mr. Testani, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, thank you, everyone from the library. I do want to dovetail off of just one quick point that Mr. Walsh brought up a minute ago on something that the Pequot Library brought up. They mentioned bringing in hundreds of books a day. I'm guessing they're not doing that during the COVID crisis right now. I just, hoping they're not. You may want to just double check with them. I'm thinking they're probably putting the donation process on hold, at least temporarily anyway, but perhaps we double check that. Number one. Number two, in terms of the library in general, in terms of furloughed employees, are there any full-time at all, or are they all strictly part-time?
All strictly part-time.
How many full-time are there currently?
28.
Between all the libraries?
There's 10 at Woods and then 18 at Maine.
Okay. And I'm curious, on the revenue side, again, just to sort of dovetail off of something Mr. Walsh brought up, on the library Kinetic card, and, well, for that matter, really any revenue item, or, well, just a couple of thoughts. One, we were talking about, and Mr. Bateson also referred to this, sort of doing a little bit more of a scientific, estimation on how you could calculate out. Have you contacted other towns, other libraries of a similar size to determine how they might come up with an estimate in terms of how they may be affected in their revenue estimations? Or is that something that you think?
No, the directors have definitely been in touch with each other trying to figure out. The Connect a Card is hard because it's the state, and
right.
You do your best to try to figure it out, and then they'd come up with a whole different number. So, but we can definitely look at some historical information and also speak to other libraries to get a better sense of that.
And will any of this, whether it's on the expense side or any potential, be applied for? I think I heard somewhere in the conversation an application that had been already put in on the state side for the CARES Act. Will any of this be offset by some of the executive orders that the governor's put in?
I don't believe that. I think that was Pequot because they're 501c3. They're a different type of library.
Right, I understand, but none of the other avenues, like the Kinetic card thing, intrigues me because it is a state program. So I'm wondering if that if the loss of the revenue there may be offset from the CARES, potentially from the CARES Act.
Oh, I haven't heard anything, but I could definitely ask. I mean, the revenue, half of it is secure in the fact that the invested funds is definitely going to come in, the 129,332.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Testani.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mrs. Charlton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think most of my questions were asked, but I just wanted to close out this question on the revenue budget and understand the next steps. Can we get a revised estimate of the revenues for the 2021 budget, given what we know now? And understanding that what we have in front of us clearly, I think we could probably say the same for most of the town departments, that the revenue we're envisioning for a variety of reasons has changed over the last 2 months. So what do you anticipate the timing of that to be?
What, to get you a revised?
Yes.
By next week, early.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Charlton. Any further questions on the library? Okay. Just want to make sure I'm looking at every single board member. Okay, seeing none, I want to thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for your service to the town running these libraries. We appreciate what you do. And you're out relatively early, 10 of 9, so have a good rest of the night.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all you do. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay, so we're on to Penfield Pavilion. We have Mr. Anthony Calabrese here, our Director of Park and Rec. Anthony, thank you for being here. So the expenses are on page 245, but before we get to that, what I like to do, and Ms. Bassi, I'll turn it over to you, or at least just correct me where I may go wrong. What I want to start is one of our documents that we received today was to projected net estimated operational variance, okay, for period ending June 30th. So our executive summary, okay, this worksheet, it's the regular worksheet that we generally get on our quarterly review. Yes, that's it. Yep. Okay, and all we want to do tonight is focus on Park and Rec revenue. When we talk to the fund balance and revenues, we'll have like a revenue night sometime in the next couple weeks. But for tonight, we'll just stick with Park and Rec. And if you look in one of the columns, it says estimate Park and Rec if we have a June 1 open. Okay, so if we do not open in May at all, and we open only in June 1, it's a loss of revenues for this budget season, 2020, of $843,000. If we do not open June 1, so we're closed all of June, and we open July 1, it's a revenue loss of $1.8 million. Okay, and we have spreadsheets
1.8
to give a description in which we can go over of where the losses occur on the revenue side. We also have a spread, which are these, right? You all received these?
Mm-hmm. Do we get that? Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then we have total savings spreadsheet for June 1, July 1, and then we'll talk about August when we get into 2021. And Ms. Bassi, if I'm reading this right, if we don't open June 1, or if you don't open until June 1, we have a savings of $100,191. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. But that 843 takes into account that savings?
No. That 843, if you look at the June 1 opening, the detail of the 843 is revenue only, loss of revenue only.
All right, so we have loss of revenue, but we also have cost reductions, correct? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and if we don't open until July 1, so if we're closed all of June, we have cost savings of $247,000, is that correct?
Plus the 100.
Plus the 100, so 300, about 350 altogether.
Yes.
So what I like to do, just to close up 2020, we don't know, and I guess this question would be to our first select woman, or Mr. Bremer, we don't know right now when we're going to open up. Is that right, Mrs. Kupchak?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
No, we're projecting, we're going by the guidelines of the State Department of Health and the executive orders from the governor and also our Department of Health. So right now, we're looking at what the governor said. April 20th is looking to doing a phased-in reopening of the state. We're assuming, based on the new...
May 20.
May 20.
May 20.
We're assuming, based on the information that, you know, the peak is hitting, they moved it from the 15th to the 25th, that May 20th potentially could be a date we could start. Where our emergency command team is meeting tomorrow, and one of the items on the agenda is to talk about how we would begin the process of reopening our town safely, in accordance with all the rules that are coming out, and obviously would be based on how the peak hits and if the curve starts to go down as well.
Okay, so it's very possible we may open June 1.
Yeah, like we were looking at some things, you know, and you know, we haven't made any decisions yet, but like golf could potentially be played safely, you know, by June 1st if everyone shelters in place and does what they're supposed to do. We could potentially see something like that if, you know, if they're following tight rules and guidelines by June 1st, yes.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Kupchak. And
Welcome.
Ms. Bassi, I see, yeah, the cost savings are under the expense side, of course, right? So, yep, thank you. Okay, so as far as 2020 goes, Mr. Calabrese, anything you'd like to point out to us in regards to the spreadsheet? Or we'll start with June 1?
No, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It's all the revenue projections are based on past revenue projections, so nothing out of the ordinary there.
All right, so I'll turn it over to the board. Does the board have any questions on the revenue shortfall estimate for June 1 open or July 1 open, or any questions on the June 1 spreadsheet? Mrs. Charlton.
Yes, thank you. When you use the June 1 and July 1 assumptions, is that, are those scenarios that are all or nothing, if you will? So the first select woman just described a scenario where it may be prudent to open up golf courses because golf is not a contact sport and people could play safely, but perhaps we wouldn't open other public spaces. But this estimate here, does this assume that everything opens at the same time totally on these dates, or how have you thought about that?
Correct. Those are based on everything opening up as of those dates. Okay. And as the first select woman mentioned, that's probably not realistic, but this would be the most cautious way to approach these savings.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to estimate it now. We all appreciate that, but as we move along, particularly when we start to look at the budget numbers, I think it will be necessary to probably put some individual assumptions behind some of these activities, considering not only what's permissible, but echoing Mr. Walsh's comments from earlier, even if we have the ability to open some things, we may find that residents are not comfortable gathering in crowded spaces or participating in events, et cetera. So, I don't know, maybe just give me your thoughts about that. How have you thought about that? I know we asked for a couple of different scenarios, but what's your view in terms of what this might look like maybe a little bit more realistically?
I personally don't think anything will be opened up before June 1st. And I think once it's opened up, based on everything I've seen on the news and the chats that I've had with the emergency team, it seems that things will be eased up on in phases. So whether that means, groups can't be in more than gatherings of 10 or gatherings of 50, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if the paranoia of, going out and getting sick, keeps people from going to the beaches. I mean, obviously, if people don't go to the beaches, we lose our parking revenue. We lose our beach sticker revenue. If people don't want to go out and play golf, we lose our golf revenue. So the all or nothing approach that I took, just showing you if everything opens up, June 1st or July 1st, is really the worst case scenario. June 1st, everything opening up, I don't think we're going to see all that revenue, but I don't think we're going to lose it all either. I think there's a lot of people that still want to get out of the house and do something. They're going out there now. The police are ticketing people. We're walking on the beach. So there's people that want to get out there, and they'll pay to get out there. But I don't know that it's going to be our normal numbers, and I don't think it'll be, if things are open, I don't think there won't be anybody there. So.
Okay. I think it's helpful from the standpoint of understanding the relationship between revenue and expenses. So if nothing's open, it's easier to estimate what happens with seasonal payroll, for example. But, I tend to believe that we're going to, at least from everything I'm hearing from the governor and others, it sounds like things are probably going to be eased up in terms of restrictions, and we will likely not have, an all or nothing situation. So I don't know what this is going to look like in terms of estimating, but we'll probably have to revisit some type of midpoint on that. So I'll let others ask questions for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Charlton. So I have Mr. Mottola, then Mr. Basin, then Mr. DeWitt, and then Ms. Marmee. Okay, so just in that order. Mr. Mottola?
Thank you, John Mottola. Hey, Anthony, thanks for being here. I just have a question on the opening sheet where we have on here the line item 42403 programs, and it said $142,000, and you say this revenue has already been completed for the fiscal year. Are those the programs that are detailed on page 249 of the budget book? And that page, Anthony, is the self-supporting programs. Are those the same things?
Yes, John, that's correct. That money is collected October 1st.
All right. Would those include these collected, for example, for the upcoming summer camp programs that are run by the town?
In theory, yes. Summer camp gets collected in February, the revenue. So it would actually be from last year's, but yeah. Summer camp, soccer programs, basketball, all the youth programming.
All right. And if you have, and maybe I'm jumping ahead here and I apologize, but you have on the budget book that these are self-supporting programs. So is it fair to say that if it's safe to do these things, right, we wouldn't need to cut them to save money. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. All right. And do those
The only items?
Go ahead.
Yeah, the only items I think that you would be looking to cut are the ones that are outlined in our expense line. So some of our programming that's in there is going to be summer concerts, Memorial Day parades, your fireworks,
right.
special education programming. You know, throughout the summer, their summer camps, their year-round program, things of that nature, lifeguards.
All right. Do the self-supporting programs, do they produce any revenue over and above what they cost to run?
So on that spreadsheet, that's the 142 that was collected in October. So in the past, we had always given about $80,000, and then when I took over as director, we doubled that to 160. We came up a little short in October this year of that 160, but in a normal year, you know, a typical year, we're right around that.
Okay, so that's the actual, that's the revenue.
That's correct.
That's what we've made off of these self-supporting programs.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing else.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mottola. Mr. Bateson.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Anthony, good to hear from you. Couple of things. Jim, are we just talking about all revenue for Parks and Rec right now?
For 2020.
For 2020. Okay, quick thing. Anthony, I have a bunch of schedules in front of me. Thanks for putting together all these scenarios. Let's get to boat fees, marina dockage. I gave a check in sometime in December for for this summer. What are we telling the boaters regarding revenue? I'm pretty sure that revenue is in fiscal year 20 budget, the check that I gave over the winter. And then I see a spreadsheet that you put out that says something along the lines of fees due in February, refunds for prior year. I see that number of $300,000. Is there a plan in Parks and Rec to refund half the marina fees?
I wouldn't say that there's a plan in place, but it's something I have to look at.
I think that's wise of you to put that in, because that's the question that went through my mind. If, you know, I paid for the full year and I don't think I'm getting it. So I'm glad that you're considering it.
And, well, as Ms. Shelton pointed out, I mean, we don't really know when we're opening. So if we can't open up the marina till, you know, August, there's got to be I would think some proration should be considered. So I had put it on that spreadsheet, but unfortunately the way it would work is it would come out of the next fiscal year, so fiscal 21, which is the next budget. So we'd be losing revenue there as opposed to fiscal 20. So.
Right. That's why I was asking Jim what year we're on. But I understand that the revenue that you have in the bank now is for fiscal year 20, but it looks like you might be taking a hit in fiscal year 21 to do refunds for fiscal year 20, correct?
That's what I was showing, but no decision on that had been made. So.
And that's not your decision? Is that a Park and Rec Commission?
The commission is normally the one who makes that decision, but again, we're still optimistic that we're going to be able to get the marina open in a reasonable amount of time.
Okay. I got a couple other things. And something for the Golf Commission to consider. I know that on one of your spreadsheets you were talking about golf ID cards for Smith Richardson and so forth. I can imagine a lot of people right now are just not getting ID cards because they don't know what's going on with the course. I mean, if you guys want to get revenue in the door, maybe talk to the Golf Commission and then just say, for this year, 50% off golf ID cards. I'm just thinking, you know, a lot of people are doing different things to get money in the door. If that's something, you know, put that on their table.
Yep. It's a conversation that I plan on having with the commission. I've been having it offline with individual commissioners right now just because they haven't had a meeting in several months. So. Okay,
my last thing. I know you guys are trying to balance public health and safety. We're here obviously as on a dollar aspect. I want to see people approach. I know that we're going to start talking about reopening the economy and so forth. That's going to be the catchphrase of the next couple of weeks, I would envision. As opposed to waiting for one magic date, I would like to see department heads approach the first select woman when they hear about something and say, hey, look, you know, we're getting a demand up at, you know, Smith Richardson for people to hit a bucket of balls. You know, Peter Grace might be getting some feedback up there saying, hey, you know, it's one guy. It's a bucket of balls. I mean, the demand is out there. People are looking for stuff to do. People are pent up. They're looking for activities. I just want the town to keep an open mind and just say, okay, everything's shut down. I get it. But if there's a chance or an opportunity for us to start rolling stuff out slowly, I would like to see department heads approach the first selectman and say, hey, look, you know, I realize things are closed, but this is happening. So that's just my 2 cents on that to try and, you know, keep the ball rolling here.
Understood.
That's all I got, Jim. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Mr. DeWitt. Is
that me, Mr. Chairman? Sorry about that.
Thank
Chris
you.
DeWitt. Thank you. So, you know, Anthony, for beaches, I mean, we really don't care about the beach being opening from a revenue perspective until Memorial Day, right? Because up until that point, we're not generating any revenue, correct?
That's correct.
So figure that. So if we're on, do really open on June 1st, that we would probably be okay. You mentioned beach stickers before. I'm curious what the beach sticker sales are today. I know I have mine already, just like Ed already bought his slip for his boat. I have all my beach stickers, and they're all plastered on my car. So you got my $120 already. I mean, how many people actually don't buy them until now? I mean, haven't most people already bought their beach stickers?
A third have bought them so far.
A third.
We get
okay.
Yeah, we start selling December 1st of the year prior. So normally December 1st and January 1st, we get the rush of the people that use the transfer station. Then you get the early birds that start looking for, you know, the first time the sun comes out, they're the ones that want to get their beach stickers immediately. So we get all the early birds, you know, in, you know, early March and April when the weather starts warming up. But then the bulk of our people purchase between May 1st and July 4th.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you for that. And then my last question. So you mentioned, so I'm having a little trouble finding the expense reduction. I think what I'm looking at is expense reduction. It says that if a June 1 opening, it's 100,000, 191. Is that right, Ms. Bozzi?
Yes, that's right. And that's a total sheet, and Anthony also, you'll see the other ones. He separated out Penfield and waterfront and recreation, and the total for the June 1 opening would be a savings of 100,191.
Okay, I do see that. Thank you. So that's an expense. That's expense savings. So
correct.
Anthony, you mentioned Memorial Day parade, which I have a hard time believing is going to happen, Frank, and and fireworks. Have we written off 2 events in the expense line or not?
I did not write off the fireworks. I think I may have included the $20,000 for the parade in there, though. I don't remember the assumption off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, I mean that's fair. How much are fireworks anyway? I mean, they're
fireworks. Just the show itself is about $54,000.
54,000. Okay. And when would we have to make a decision on that?
Well, the money is June 30th. Go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to jump in. Forgive me, Tom Bremer. I checked the contract, and because we signed the contract so late in the year, if we cancel, we will not get anything back on the contract. But a decision has not been made about whether or not the fireworks are going to go forward or not.
And again, I hadn't expected that to be high on First Selectwoman Kupchik's end to figure out the fireworks, but I was curious if that was a fundable thing, and I think you've answered that. So, All right, That's it for me. The spreadsheets are very helpful, especially on the expense side. So thank you for all that. I'm sure it's not easy, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Mrs. Marion.
Thank you. Mr. Mottola had actually covered some of what I wanted to ask you in terms of the self-supporting programs, in particular the summer playground, the camp for the kids, that money's already been, they've already paid for those programs. I guess just as a follow-up, say you don't open until August 1st, would you consider rescheduling some of those camps, doubling up, doing something so that those kids could still participate even if they missed it time-wise?
If we couldn't run summer camp until August 1st, we may be able to do some kind of modified, 2-week program, but we wouldn't be able to go any further than that, at least at the school site. And if we move from the school sites and we just go to a park site, different parks around town, we could do it, but there's some other logistical things that we'd have to work through, bathrooms, water, things of that nature. So it does make it very difficult. It is a self-supporting program, so it would be a lot of refunds that we obviously don't want to do. We prefer to have camp, and we think the kids need camp this summer.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Mrs. LeClaire?
Taylor covered most of what I was going to ask, but that's what I was going to ask Anthony is, when does he have to pull the trigger on a lot of these expenses for programs? So are we having to spend money now that we may not get, or can we hold off on some of it? That was really what I was looking for.
Yeah. So anything that we've had to have a contract for, so a lot of the concerts and stuff come out of the budget here, the operating budget, our summer concerts. We've had to send over contracts for that. Essentially, finance has asked us just to sit on those as long as we can, and our vendors are pretty good. They've been all very good about not getting paid until we have a little more clarity in what's going to happen. We've canceled all our programs for the months of April and May already. So anybody that was in a program for April or May, they've already been refunded or are in the process of being refunded.
And do we still have to pay the instructor for different programs? Or?
Depends on the program. I think for most of them, we have not had to pay the instructor because most of them are independent contractors that work off of the fees.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. LeClaire. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to ask a couple of questions in regards to the marina and follow up on some of Mr. Bateson's questions. First of all, has the governor by executive order closed marinas?
Not to my knowledge.
So our marina is closed at the direction of the first select woman under her emergency powers?
With the advice of the health department and the emergency management team, yes.
And I've got a number of the same email from a number of constituents, and does Justin Cathcart report to you, Anthony?
He splits between me and DPW, Brian Carey, yeah.
Okay. So he sent out a email today, and this kind of differs from what you said earlier, but it was to all boaters, trying to advise them where we stood as of today and giving them specific direction. And I'm going to read a paragraph from that email, which says, the Parks and Rec Department is not prorating fees for this season, as those fees go into the town's general fund and help offset the cost of the emergency response to this health crisis. Is that an accurate statement? Did you pre-read this? Is that really your position?
Well, I did pre-read it, and as of right now, we still believe that we're going to be able to get the marina open. So we're optimistic that we're not going to have to prorate anybody. But as I stated earlier, it's something I've considered, as you guys have seen the spreadsheets of everything that I've been working on.
Okay.
So, it's just, right now, the situation is very fluid, as I'm sure all of you guys are aware of. I would love to have the boaters down there, but we can't right now.
Okay, but you understand why that would cause some angst amongst the boating population, which I just want to be clear. I don't own a boat. I get seasick, so I have no skin in this game at all. But you could imagine why this would cause angst for people who paid a full, like Mr. Bateson, paid a full boat fee, and depending on how this rolls out, they might not even get to use the boat this entire season, depending on what happens. So, it might be clearer for somebody to get back saying that you're going to continue to analyze this policy as things progress. Because I think people think this is the final decision. You're not prorating, but yet you're telling us you may prorate.
I think all options have to be on the table at this point. Again, we don't know what's going to happen if we don't open up till August or September. I mean, that's their whole season essentially, or a good percentage of their season.
Yep. I just think they kind of need to know that this is going to be continuing to be looked at, because right now the official position as of today, where you're giving them the most accurate information as of today, is we're not prorating.
Well, I could also tell you, no matter what emails Justin sent out, we were going to get 24 to 30 emails, no matter what. It didn't matter. There's people that are very understanding that the marina is not open, and there's others that, are completely irate that they can't go down and use their boat.
Yeah. And I understand maybe why the marinas would be shut, but I think it would be a problem if this thing drags out, and because of social distancing reasons, people don't get to use their slip for, May, June, July.
Yep.
It would seem to be a major problem that we'd be charging a full fee and no one's using it.
Understood.
Okay. Can I talk to you about the Penfield Pavilion? Because you do have some numbers here I'm looking at the August 1st numbers. Are people trying to cancel using our facility, and how are you guys handling that? Obviously lots of weddings and things like that.
So, yes, we have canceled all parties that were in, obviously, late March, all of April, and all of May to date. And when I say cancel, we worked with as many as we could to move to alternate dates. If they were able to move to the fall, there might be a difference in price. If they're able to move to the next year, again, we would try to move them. If they weren't able to move their function for whatever reason, we offered them a refund, which is something we don't normally do. So they got their full amount of money back. When we get people that are calling us for a wedding in November that they want to cancel, or October due to COVID-19, those ones we're pushing back on right now, and we're trying to still work with them and offer them an alternate date, but I'm not willing to refund those parties yet, not that far out in advance. So that's basically the way we've been handling it. We're trying to still stick to our policies that we have, but we're understanding of the situation that we are currently in.
What about the people from June, July, August, September?
So we have not had too many of them reach out to cancel yet. Some have looked to switch dates already, and some have. But I don't believe we've had any cancellations to my knowledge at this point.
Okay. And do you have a pretty full calendar?
Yeah, the summer. This is April to November is our busiest time. We're pretty much booked solid.
Okay. And what about the Penfield lockers? Were you sold out, and now you're not going to be able to? Just give me, synopsis of what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so the last 2 years, we've actually had about 50 to 60 lockers available of our 194 lockers. So we've only been selling between 120 to 130 lockers each season. So I was reducing that revenue this year to a more realistic number where we thought we were, where I think we'll be.
Okay.
The price is, I mean, it's $200. I believe it's $200 for a senior locker rental and $300 for a regular adult, family-sized locker. So I didn't think it was too expensive that we needed to reduce.
What did it used to be? Because it used to always sell out, right? It used to be really hard to get a locker.
It was, and the prices were the same.
Really? So what do you think happened?
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know.
I think that's all I have for you, Mr. Calabrese. I appreciate your responses.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Testani.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, Anthony, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jack. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out tonight. Just a quick question, a similar question that I had to the representatives from the library. Just curious, had you reached out to other towns to, obviously we're in a unique position given, our situation with the marina and beaches. I just was curious, if you did reach out to other towns to come up with these calculations, especially on the expense side, and B, if you did, if you hadn't had the chance to do that, what the rationale was. What was there percentages you used? I just was curious, how you calculated out these numbers.
So I talked to most of my Fairfield County colleagues almost daily, especially since COVID has hit us. We're all in the same situation where it's complete unknown territory to all of us. But my projections on the expenses are based on our actuals from previous years. Our expenses and revenues for that part, for the most part, are pretty steady. So they're easy for. I don't want to say they're easy for me to track, but we can go back and see how much money we took in June, for the last couple of years and average it out and say, okay, we're probably going to bring in that same amount of money. And same thing with the expenses. I mean, the expense side, little more difficult, but for the most part, we can see trends in it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Testani. Any other questions on this is revenue now and cost for 2020. Okay.
Mr. Brown, can I just make one comment? It's really not a question, but it was just a kind of a follow-up. I think it was to Mr. Bates's comment about golf revenue. If I got the person wrong, I apologize. But in regards to the golf cart, without having really golf cart sales going on, and, Anthony, I think you and I had spoken offline maybe a week ago or 10 days ago. I think it would be a really good thing for the town to want there to be activity up at the golf course when it finally does open up. And the season kind of probably going to be half over by the time we're able to really get there, hopefully maybe sooner, but that town residents be maybe able to just show a Fairfield driver's license or some other form of ID and just be able to get the resident rate. I don't think people should lose the resident rate and have to pay the out-of-town rate just because we're not issuing golf cards or just because it's not financially feasible based on what you charge for a golf card. I think it's more important that, people be able to play golf if they want to play it, and, residents, taxpayers, whatever, they should be able to play. And that's just a comment. And if you could pass that along to the Golf Commission, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
I'll pass it along.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh. Okay, so we will go to 2021 proposed budget. We'll start with Penfield, page 245, on the expense side. Then we'll go to revenue for Penfield. So, Anthony, just want to review this budget with us, please? Any comments on here?
I would love to review it with you, but I've sent you guys I believe, every line item that has more than a 5% difference with an explanation, and I'm hoping, and I'm sure you've all read that. So I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Other than that, right? Other than them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay, any questions on the expense side? We do have the 5% difference over fiscal year 20 in our documents. Now, it doesn't mean there can't be any questions on them. It just means we have so many answers, right? But we appreciate this because this is a big help, so thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, did you have a question? Jim, you're on mute.
You didn't have to tell him.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Calabrese, is there any other savings that you would find in expenses because of what's going on and people maybe not using the beach, not being able to use the beach as much until at a certain point in time, and even when they do come back, maybe not as many people being down at the beach because of still wanting to do social distancing? So is there any other savings on any of your expense lines within this budget?
Tough to predict, but if there were to be savings in the Penfield line item, obviously if we weren't having if we were canceling weddings for July, say, there would be savings there, but I outlined that savings in one of those other Excel sheets. There could also be savings on the cleaning and janitorial supplies. If not as many people are using the restrooms down there, then obviously we wouldn't have to order as much cleaning supplies and things of that nature. There may be some savings in the utilities, just because, again, the building wouldn't be used as much. But, again, tough for me to predict those numbers. But for the Penfield budget, that's a very lean budget, and a lot of it's used for marketing and staffing. So.
Okay. And if you don't mind, Anthony, as we go through all these budgets we're going to talk to you about, I'm going to ask you the same question. So if you could just start off with that answer, just to enlighten us, so we don't have to keep asking.
You got it.
Thanks, Anthony. I appreciate it.
Mr. DeWitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris DeWitt. I see in the expense side reduction, there's some savings in printing and stuff like that, and I just want to be, I want to make sure we're being prudent about this stuff, right? I mean, we're going to reopen. I'm kind of worried that we're sending out flyers. They're not sending out media things, but we are going to open someday. So reductions in, printing and binding and postage. I mean, are we doing ourselves a disservice by looking to cut those expenses?
No, this was transferred to the waterfront line. So yes, it's a reduction from the Penfield line, but it was for Penfield stickers for the boat rack. So I just moved that over to waterfront to keep it there.
Okay, because I'm just looking at the overall $100,000 cut, and again, I very much hate the side reduction thing, but I really want to be clear. I don't want to be, Penn Smart and Dollar Fool. I want to make sure that we're still promoting Penfield, still promoting Jackie Durrell, still promoting our lockers, because holy crap, if we open on June 1st and July 1st, we actually want people to buy them when we do open, right?
Yeah, our marketing budget has increased there, and we're going to continue to market the building. We expect to have our best year yet. I mean, that's we're striving for every year to bring in more money for Penfield and Jackie. So we're going to continue to do that.
Oh, that's great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Mrs. Charlton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just more of a comment. As we go through these numbers and we're talking to different department heads, I think we're hearing individual opinions that don't make a lot of sense when you start comparing them to each other. So we heard, for example, from the Pequot Library that they think it's pretty much inconceivable that they're going to have a book sale this year because of social distancing measures that they expect to be put in place. And yet, you know, and if we believe that, then it really doesn't make sense to count on the fact that we're going to be having, you know, big events in the Penfield Pavilion at the same time. So I think at some point here, knowing that we're going to have imperfect information, that we will not have all of the answers, we really need to talk about and come to some agreement on what we do believe, and we need to apply those principles across the board. Because otherwise, every department's going to be operating under a different set of assumptions on what they believe they're going to do, and it just doesn't mesh. It strikes me from what I've heard that there are clearly some open spaces that it may make sense to open up earlier. We talked about golf. We talked about perhaps the marina. That's very different from promoting or sponsoring programs or renting rooms where we're having large numbers of people in confined spaces. I don't think any health expert believes that we are going to have a vaccine or, you know, a therapy produced at scale within the next 2 months for this virus. So I would just, I think we can go through the line items, but in terms of the scenarios and what we do, I just think it's really important that we have some sense of what the strategy is and what we believe the assumptions are going to be, and then we agree that they get applied consistently across the board.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Charlton. I think it's a good point. And yeah, all these events, as I think you pointed out, are different. Some are similar, some are different. You know, golf is different than the book fair.
Right.
Leasing out Penfield, is that different than a book fair? It's probably a little bit closer, right? So we have to.
I think it's, you know, golf is a good example. I just view it differently because you have smaller groups of people that have the ability to social distance, particularly if you're not using carts. You can play golf responsibly. There's not a way to, you know, enforce any kind of distancing if you're sponsoring programs where you have large numbers of people in confined spaces. And I think we've just got to be realistic here. I know I'll be accused of being the person.
Gloom and doom.
Yeah, but let's face it. We've been, you know, we're hearing from all the experts we're not going to have a vaccine for at least a year. We've seen a resurgence of this virus in some countries that had tamped it down. So it's hard for me to envision a scenario where things are going back to normal. And so whatever the principles are, you know, we can have some debate on what they are, but I do think they need to be applied consistently throughout, you know, bucket into some reasonable set of criteria that makes sense. And, you know, maybe that means hiking trails or open spaces where there's a lot of room. We assume those are going to be open. We assume the marina is going to be open as of a certain day. So we have to make some assumptions without knowing all the facts. And I do believe we need to do them in a way that's in sync across these various departments. And we probably need to do that pretty quickly because we're going to have to vote on a budget in less than 3 weeks that, you know, has a bunch of revisions in it that contemplate all those principles. So.
Yeah, thank you. You know, we're going to revisit because we'll have the time on 4/28. At least that's what I penciled in. Revenue, and we'll try and come to some type of a consensus as a board on that night. And we may ask some people back, Anthony back, Ms. Brown back. We mentioned to Tom Conley, we would want to see him after he did some of his own research, right? And we can take another look at that. You know, we'll talk about the tax collection rate that night. I mean, we'll probably talk about that before, but we can revisit all the revenue lines and start making assumptions. Since that was brought up,
part of the reason I say this is I know that it's a lot of work for the department heads to think through these things. And, you know, for Parks and Rec, in particular, there are multiple pieces. And there's a lot of interplay between revenues and expenses, and it's not an all or nothing, right? So we need to make sure that we've got adequate time once we do have those, assumptions down to then go back and have the right folks gather up what those numbers would look like under a particular scenario. So, as Anthony and others go through this process, I think we're going to have to realize that, for better or for worse, we're going to have to pick what we believe and budget accordingly, and know that we're not going to have 100 answers.
I think it'll be somewhere between being overly optimistic and gloom and doom.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bateson.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I got a quick question, too. I guess it's either going to be Caitlin or Anthony. I heard when we were just talking about Penfield Pavilion, fiscal year 20, depending upon when we reopen, so forth and so on, there might be possible savings in part-time payroll. I just want to get a feel for how in-depth the analysis is that we did for projected net estimated operational variance. Caitlin, did you get it like an estimate from Anthony that there might be a possible savings in that expense line, and is that included in your, June and July opening estimate?
Yes, and you have that sheet, Ed. That's the sheet. It says total on top, and for the June 1 opening, it's $100,000. So that's broken out by...
Is that page 3 of this thing?
There's like 5 or 6 sheets, and the total sheet adds it all together. There's a recreation sheet, a waterfront sheet, Penfield sheet,
Okay,
HSR.
the only one I saw was total. So if I go into the backup, where is it, on another tab on there or something?
No, they were individual PDFs, so you should, they were all in one PDF.
Okay, sorry. Got a lot of PDFs floating around here. I didn't see it. But, so you have taken into consideration those scenarios from each department head?
This is just Anthony's number.
Just Anthony.
For now. I'm just talking about Anthony's saving. But yes, there's a $500,000 part-time saving across multiple departments in both scenarios.
Okay, good.
For
That's
the
what I was looking
furloughed
for.
people.
All right. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. DeWitt, you had a question?
I did. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in about, I want to caution us from being too overly pessimistic about the revenue reduction, because, as much as I appreciate all these numbers, they really are just guesses. I can tell you from the DeWitt household, the day we can leave this house, we're going to go in 4 different directions. I don't expect to see anybody for freaking 3 weeks. And so we might all be at the beach. I don't know. But I think it might be a good idea to let the administration maybe give us a feel on that thing, on that, right? Because as Ms. Kupchik was talking about earlier, we're really bound by what the governor's saying. The governor's like, hey, May 20th, that's it. I don't think, I think she's wisely followed those guidelines of the state, and I think she's going to wisely follow them till they're, no longer imposed. But I feel like she's got that center of the universe kind of thing. So I'm with Ms. Charlton. We should pick it. I might want to push back on the administration a little bit, and just to, when time comes and we know it's July 1st, let the administration say, guys, I think it's July 1st, and then we have all the numbers in front of us. We can work from there, right?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. DeWitt.
Yeah, and then I only had one other quick question for Anthony. Is the tennis? I don't know if taking down the dome makes it a social distancing sport at that point, but is the dome even still up? I know it's kind of the time we take it down, right?
It normally comes down right around May 1st. As of 2 days ago, it was still up. Though the tennis center has closed. It's been closed since I want to say March 16th or so.
Okay. So if it were open, would there be a potential for it? Sorry, if the dome were down, would there be a potential for it to be like golf and all those other sports that we can social distance on?
Hey, Chris, can I just jump in?
Sure.
The Department of Health, it's a little different because you're sharing a tennis ball. You're all touching a tennis ball. So it's a little different than the
Okay.
golf.
Yeah. Okay. That makes. I got it. Okay. Great. Thank. That's it for me. Thank.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to revenue. We've discussed revenue a lot, but this is for 2021. It's on page 20. So we're looking at revenue for Penfield. Just Penfield only right now. So, Mr. Calabrese, anything to add other than what we talked to? You have $335,000 for Penfield 1. You have $140,000 for Jackie Durrell. We have our concession and we have the lockers. As long as we open right on July 1, this is obviously a July 1 estimate when you did the budget. So
that part's correct. So there's a couple variables here that come into play, a couple unknowns. I'm comfortable with that locker revenue because that'll be for next summer. So I know that's probably right where we'll be. I think things will be back to normal by then. The concession revenue, we normally collect half each fiscal year, so it totals that. There's a chance that the concessionaire this year, if he's not open by Memorial Day, is going to say, I want some kind of rebate on my rent. So we may not be collecting the full amount of that. And then the same would go for the rentals at Jackie Durrell and Penfield. If the governor still has some kind of executive order where you can't have a gathering of more than 50 people or 100 people or 200 people, there would be a chance that some of those parties would be canceled automatically.
I just question, when people rent out Jackie Durrell, is that for generally the same type of party? Is it for weddings? Is it for birthdays? Is it for what? As compared to Penfield?
They both get very similar types of parties. Jackie Durrell is a smaller building, only holds up to 125 people, so that's their capacity, where Penfield holds more than 175. But you get everything. You get all the mitzvahs, you get the retirement parties, the weddings, surprise parties, you name it, we get them.
Okay, big mix. But you said so far you have not received many or been any cancellations?
For those July and
right, for July.
August month. Yep.
Okay, any further questions on revenue? Okay. So now we're on to Parks and Rec, page 248.
So to answer Mr. Walsh's question right off the bat, with this one, the one line item where we'd be able to save costs really are fees and professional services. Again, that's our fireworks, our Memorial Day parade, and some concerts that are in there. So that line item, obviously, if some of those things don't happen or less of those things happen, that line could be reduced. Maintenance and repairs of buildings and grounds, that's typically when I resurface tennis courts each year. We could always put that on hold if we were in dire need that, we needed to save something. But all the other lines there, again, are very lean.
Okay, questions on expenses?
Thank you, Anthony.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Anthony. Questions on expenses? Mr. DeWitt?
So just to be clear, it doesn't sound like when Mr. Bremer just told us a few minutes ago that the $54,000 for the 4th of July fireworks is up for grabs. That sounds like they're going to make us hold to that contract whether we can shoot them off or not, correct?
So that money comes out of this year's budget. So we always pay for that.
Oh,
in advance.
it's in arrears. Okay.
Yep.
Do we get to keep the fireworks though?
If we're paying for it, we're having it.
Do them at your house, John.
So in fiscal year 21's budget, that's for shooting off fireworks in July of 2021.
21, yeah.
Yeah, got it. Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, any further questions from the board on expenses? Mr. DeWitt, you have another one?
Yeah, sorry. But Anthony, not Memorial Day, right? So this budget that we're talking, the budget we're talking about right now for, I'm sorry, I was talking over you. I apologize.
That's okay. The one that I'm in fiscal 21 would be Memorial Day of 21.
Oh, got it. Okay, so the Memorial Day okay, because that falls before June 30th. Okay, so that makes sense. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, we do have a worksheet.
Can I ask him just one last question? In regards to the fireworks, I presume you're going to try to have some type of conference with fireworks. I mean, I can't believe that we'd be the only one in this position. And I'm sure something's going to happen where they're going to offer some discount or credit for the next year. And maybe not for the whole thing.
Yeah, we've been in talks with them already. Obviously,
Okay.
We're all optimistic that the show is still going to happen.
Yep, good. That's a good way to play.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. So we do have a document spreadsheet before us that has been referred to a couple times of what the total revenue loss would be if we don't open until August 1, right? And that would be 1.3 million. Okay.
Approximately.
But really, it doesn't look like that's going to happen, right? That everything's going to be shut down until 8/1. So, I have a question for Ms. Kupchak, if I may. At some point, there'll be instead of every department head assuming and making their own plans, at some point there'll be a view from your administration on what's going to open and when it's going to open, and I assume that will be within sometime in May or earlier.
Right.
Hey, Jim.
You're right, Jim. I mean, it's not just me, but it's the emergency operations team. We're all in there together. And so we're making decisions based on health. I had a conference call with all the area leaders in Fairfield County I set up this week. And we're having a follow-up next week. And we're just all talking about how we're making adjustments and what they're doing too. I mean, most of them are obviously in the same boat as us. They're handling a little different than we are. But we're all waiting to see. It's a wait and see game, and that's why the governor signed the executive order that allows towns to make adjustments after their mill rates passed, so that you have a better sense of things. I know a lot of people want to try to speculate, but none of us can really speculate anything. We don't know. You can just guesstimate. It's all crystal ball guesstimate stuff. And so that's why the governor did that. And most towns are making all the leaders I were on the phone with were just making some adjustments, and they were using they were doing some bonding. Every one of them I talked to were doing bonding, some fund balance, and some cuts. And then they were Westport passed their budget the night before last. And they're just going to wait until after and see how it rolls out, August, September, and see how things look. Because it's so hard to try to know. None of us really know. None of us have ever been through anything like this.
Right. Okay. So you will wait to hear, how it progresses and what the governor more or less what his executive orders and or thoughts are, and then you'll take it from there. I think that's what I'm hearing.
It's also a sense of, you know, how people are responding. Right now, the majority of our residents in our town, and most towns, are towing the line and doing what they're supposed to do and taking their civic responsibilities seriously. But who knows? You know, people start getting restless, and I don't know. I mean, we're hoping that people will still try to do their best to, but you don't know, Jim. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, if people start breaking this quarantine thing and start doing whatever they want, we could end up with a peak that lasts way longer. So we don't know, really.
Okay. Thanks, Brenda. Mr. DeWitt, Mr. DeWitt had his hand up first. Is that a follow-up on my question?
Yeah, it's that and to Ms. Kupchik, you know, I know the governor is going to give the towns a little latitude after we set the mill rate. But the fact is we have to still set a mill rate, right? So I was speaking to our TM leader, said, you know, we have like till the 5th of May to vote, and then they're going to do their process, right? So I think what we need leadership is at least a guess, and I know it's no more than that, and the fact that the governor has allowed us to play with the mill rate afterwards about June 1, July 1, August 1. I mean, I wouldn't be in real favor of line in our on August 1. I mean, if I had a vote, I'd say July 1. But I think we do need that guidance because there's, I mean, these numbers are just in Anthony's side, and I think Anthony's probably the most volatile of any of them, to be honest with you. But his $150,000, $200,000, $300,000 difference. So, can we expect, or maybe I put it out to the board? Am I the only one that thinks we need to pick a date soon, like before we vote?
You broke up a little bit there, Chris, so I didn't get what you were saying.
What Mr. DeWitt's saying is, as a board, do we feel that we would need some type of an answer before we vote?
Yeah, and John, I'm sorry. And the answer is, you know, what's the best guess? June 1, July 1, or August 1? Because again, especially in Anthony's budget, there's big differences in revenue and there's big differences on expense side.
Yeah, I don't know how we vote without understanding what that assumption is. We have to make an estimate. No entity, no business, no government, nobody knows for sure, but we still have to make an estimate using the best information we have available, and we have to do it before we vote because, as Chris said, it drives, the size of those revenue estimates drive the bottom line of what we need in terms of a mill rate or other spending cuts. So this is necessary. I mean, obviously we need to take the time to do it and do it intelligently with as much information as we have, but, and to Brenda's, the first select woman's point, listen, if things change later, if the recovery is quicker, if we get more revenue from the federal government than we anticipated, you can add things back to the budget later. I think we just have to do that as soon as we can because it drives so much of what the decision is. It drives so many other decisions. If all these revenues decline by a couple $1 million, we got to come up with that somewhere. And, knowing that target sooner rather than later would be helpful for everyone. So,
So, Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that the board go forward as, instead of talking about that now, work on the budget and look at all the information and take it in. And then when you're closer to your vote, hopefully we'll have a better idea then.
Okay, so that's
we're working on, like I said, the emergency operations command team is going to begin its work about talking about that tomorrow. So I think what is your last couple meetings are the end of April? Is that accurate?
Yeah, so, right, that's correct. The board will meet, the last meeting scheduled before the vote, at least right now, is 4/28. And on that night, the plan, so that's 12 days from now, and a lot can happen in 12 days at this point, right? So on the 28th, the plan is to review, revenue and the assumptions on revenue with the departments that really, that present us the most opportunity for success or fail, right? So we'll look at, again, Ms. Brown's budget, we'll look at Tom Conley's budget, we'll look at Anthony's budget, and any other budget that we think we should for revenue. By then, we should have most of the expense side wrapped up. We may have a few questions there. And that'll be the night, 4/28.
So I would just say that, I would just, take the data that we're giving and look at it and wait and see what we have when you get closer to the vote, instead of speculating about it really right now.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Mottola?
So I kind of agree with everybody. I think it's important to look at it that way. But let me ask you just a practical question, maybe to Anthony and to Ms. Kupchak. And so, what happens if we can't open the beaches until August 1st? Or we know in July we can't open them? At what point do we pull the trigger and say we're not going to have a beach season? In other words, how would you keep your lifeguards around in case we wanted to open the beach on August 1st? I mean, have we thought about how something like that would work? I mean, I see both sides of the coin, but do we want to, let's assume we could go August 1st. Do we want to, say we can't have a beach season to our citizens for August and September? I mean, and I don't know if you know the answer to that question. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on something like that. Or is there a drop dead date that says that we can't, we're going to not have a beach season if we can't get it going by August 1st, drop dead date, something like that? I mean, how would that work?
So I've had chats with my staff daily, pretty much daily, about this exact conversation. We haven't come up with a drop dead date, but I do think that, August 1st would probably be a realistic one. I mean, if we couldn't open the beaches by August 1st, there's no point in having, a beach season. To try to staff it with lifeguards, you might as well just save the expense that we've had. The question ends up being, what do you do with the parking attendants? If you're not going to have a beach that's staffed by lifeguards, are you collecting daily parking? Are you scrapping the whole thing? I mean, there's revenue that goes along with that. But you could save on the expense. So I don't know, but those are conversations we've had, but we have not put a drop dead date on it, because we are still really optimistic that we're going to open up. We've been in contact. I mean, we're interviewing and hiring lifeguards as we speak. Tentatively, we're not able to process any of the paperwork through human resources because the situation we're in, but we're trying to line all those people up. And I don't know how long we'll be able to keep them on the line, lined up for a position, especially if other towns around us start opening up.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Mottola. Any other questions on? Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the expense side? Because if not, we'll go to revenue. Jim?
Yeah, Mr. Brown, I don't know what the mechanism is going to be. Like, someone going to be preparing a spreadsheet for the contingencies we come up with. But, I don't know whether you want to work with the finance department on that, but I'm sure some of it's going to be at some point a percentage basis reductions, and sometimes it's going to be a dollar amount reduction. And I think we should prepare for that contingency. I don't know who's going to do that work or do that, but at least when I used to work for corporations in finance, that's what we used to do for these type of contingencies. Until management, we all came to the decision what those contingencies were going to be. And I think Ms. Charlton's right. We've got to work off the same type of set of assumptions on this revenue stuff for all the departments. We don't think things are opening in April. August, it's not till August. If we think things, because the first select woman could tell us certain things are going to open up by July 1st, then it's July 1st. But we've got to go in with assumptions that we all agree on.
Okay.
And we got to have a spreadsheet so we can see it in case we want to change those assumptions.
So I believe, and I agree, and Mr. Calabrese has at least has a good start, right, Anthony, with your revenues and expenses that you put together for us tonight. You put August together. For if we don't open till August 1, we miss the whole month of July. We have a loss of revenue of 1.3 million and cost savings of 227,000. So we may look for a couple other scenarios. I'll take it from the board and work with Ms. Bossi on that, Mr. Bremer on that. And what we'll have is as much information as possible by April 28th. And then the vote is May 5th. Now, not that I want to go too...
Can I ask you a question, though? Because the RTM's not voting and doesn't really need this until probably almost like, I think, June 1st. Should we, not use as much time as we possibly have to get as much information that we may get?
Yep, so I was going to say, Jim, we're scheduled for May 5th. We have to May 11th.
Great. Oh, that's excellent.
According to the RTM leadership, we have until 5/11. By 5/11, that's the drop dead date for us to have to vote for them to, meet their guidelines and have their meetings and set up the vote, which I think, don't hold me to it, is June 2nd, something around that date. June 5th? Okay, so June 3rd. Okay, somewhere between June 3rd, June 5th. I'm hearing different dates, but we have, we have till 5/11 if need be. And that'll be our choice.
Thank you.
Mr. Mottola?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the RTM members I've spoken to, they would have no problem with us waiting until the last possible moment to get the best information possible. So I don't think that would be an issue with them at all if we waited until May 11th.
Right.
They told me the same thing.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Anthony, thank you for putting the information together on a line item basis as you did. I don't believe we're going to have one assumption that applies across the board to Parks and Rec. And so the way you did it, I think allows us to easily understand what the impact may be if these decisions are parsed up and certain elements of these activities open sooner than others. I think maybe the only additional thing to think about is the last thing that you mentioned, which is a little bit different. But we should have the information anyway. So if you think an August 1st opening for the beach means that, it's, under that scenario, really wouldn't happen at all. I think maybe that's just an additional item to prepare, but what you've done is helpful. And as we speak to the other departments, Mr. Chairman, I think this is the level of information that we need, because I suspect that it's going to be a mix of things based on, the circumstances of these individual activities. So thank you again, Anthony, for all the work. It's greatly appreciated. I'm sure we'll all have different views on what scenario is the most likely, but having this here for us enables us to kind of pull the trigger quickly once we figure that out. So thank you.
Yep, thank you. Mr. Bateson?
Disregard Walsh and Charlton covered it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that covers, revenue for Park and Rec, actually. We didn't really touch that, although we're touching revenue. I'm not sure if we have anything to add other than what we've already said, right? We'll take a look as the information moves forward. Right. Well, as the information moves forward and as we move forward and you get better information, and let us know if you see any changes. I would keep 428 open, okay, because that's when we meet and we'll talk about revenue, Anthony. But you're not free to go
I'm trapped
yet
at
anyway,
home,
right?
so I'll be here.
Okay.
I'll be here.
Maybe the 28th, maybe the 5th. If we don't vote on the 5th, we may move everything, but we'll, one way or another, we'll talk.
Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo. No good.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to
Yeah, where are you gonna go?
Waterfront and Marina.
I don't drink anyway.
Okay, a little levity there. Waterfront and Marina, page 252. So we have Mr. Cathcart with us, Marina Coordinator. And Anthony, you're gonna speak to it, both of you? Okay, very.
I'll speak to it until you get into the detail that you need him.
Okay, give us an overview.
So the waterfront and marina budgets used to be one budget. This past cycle, we had talked through the last budget cycle, and it was recommended that, we should probably break out the marina and try to get a true cost for it. So that's what we attempted to do here. So majority of those reductions that you're seeing in the waterfront budget are straight transfers into that new marina budget. So there's not the waterfront budget now essentially covers beach sticker costs and lifeguards and parking attendants.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything to add, Justin?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, yes.
No, Anthony's got it covered there.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, Anthony, the standard question, are there any savings in this budget based on what might happen? What lines would be affected that you haven't already talked about?
Yeah, well, I've talked about it, but depending on when we open up the beaches, the seasonal payroll for waterfront we could save a drastic amount of money there, because that's all seasonal payroll as far as lifeguards and parking attendants go. Clothing and dry goods, again, if we don't have to hire the lifeguards and the parking attendants, we save on uniform costs and bathing suits and all that kind of stuff. So those two lines, for the most part, are where we'd get savings in the waterfront budget.
Anthony, in regards to that, if we were to make an assumption or get information that we were not going to be able to use the beach in July, the waterfront in July, how much would we be able to take off of those lines in expenses?
Yeah, the seasonal line, actually both of those lines should be in one of those Excel sheets.
Okay, all right. All right.
I believe the August 1st opening has what those savings are.
Okay.
Okay. And then any further questions on expenses? Seeing none, on the revenue side?
Jim, Ed Bates, and I got something.
Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, quick thing, Anthony. New budget here. Can you explain part-time payroll and seasonal payroll? Who's what in here? Where's security and what's part-time? What's seasonal? What are in these line items?
Yep. Sorry. All right. So
I have two line items. I have part-time payroll for $23,000 and seasonal for $65,000.
Yep. The $23,000 is the special police, so that was transferred in from the police budget, and the seasonal for $65,000 are the marina guards, also transferred in from the police budget.
So my total security budget is around $90,000.
That's correct.
Okay, quick thing on the bottom are capital. Replace fuel pumps, $50,000. Are we doing the fuel pumps or are we doing frog hooks? I remember that was in flux.
I believe that's been cut, but Tom, can you chime in on that?
Yeah, this is Tom Bremer. The $50,000 on the pumps is one of our suggested cuts. the pumps have been a problem. The thought was maybe we need to replace those. That opened up a whole other issue about maybe we should replace the tanks. Maybe the oil tanks have problems with their length, and maybe we should replace the tanks. And the more we talked, the deeper the hole got. So the thought was we were going to perhaps do a non-recurring or perhaps capital, and then we just decided that since so little gasoline is dispensed from those pumps to the public, I think it's something like 1,000 gallons a season, because most of our people at the marina go to other marinas to get cheaper gas, I've been told. We decided that we're gonna put this off for at least a year, and we need to revisit the entire question of exactly why we're even offering gas to our boaters when in fact very few of them use it. So we decided to cut those pumps.
Actually, I'll just chime in too. We cut this at the Board of Selectmen meeting. I think that you saw that probably in your books. And we put 50,000 in a sort of contingency to decide what we want to do going forward, based on what we were talking about, what Tom just said.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. DeWitt, did you have a question? Okay. Okay, then, no further questions on expenses. We're back at revenue, page 20. I think it's the same discussion that we...
Can I ask you, Mr. Bremer, a question regarding the gasoline pumps?
Sure.
Is the issue with the gasoline pumps, not what the level of whether the pump needs to be replaced or not, but in regards to why the people using the marina won't use the gasoline there, isn't it a different type of gasoline that's more designed for the police boats and not for the boats of the 400 boaters?
That is news to me. I mean, it may be, because the gasoline that's dispensed there is also used by fire and police. But no one has ever said to us that there's a special blend and that's why they don't use it. If that's true, then that may be another reason why we shouldn't be in the business of dispensing gasoline to the people there. But frankly, that's the first I've heard of that.
Okay. Or, I mean, the only other reason would be, I guess, that we charge too much for the gasoline. I guess would be the other reason.
Well,
why
that may be as well. But...
Well, I just want to jump in, Jim. The guy who runs the marina shop there gets a vig on every gallon, you know, so that's part of his contract. The bottom line is it's very expensive to replace those tanks. Talking like $200,000, and we're not selling, the town of Fairfield is not really getting a bang for its buck on that thing, so that's why I postponed it at the Board of Selectmen meeting. We talked about it extensively at that meeting.
Okay. I'll watch that discussion. But if we're not offering gas that 400 people want, I mean, I don't understand, you know, I guess you guys are going to have to put that whole system together again and see whether you want to privatize it or not have gasoline at all. But
it's privatized.
If
well, I think it's already privatized. I don't think the money actually comes to the town.
We don't get any.
I don't think we make a dime off of what he sells to the public.
Anthony can answer that.
But yeah, Anthony, you want to chime in?
Sure. We only collect the lease, the rent for the building down there, for the space. He charges what he wants. As long as he's charging market rates for the gas, he makes what he makes on it.
Anthony, can you answer the question in regards to the type of gasoline he sells, whether it's more directed and more a mixture that's better for the police and fire boats versus the average boater who has the 400 boats that are in that marina?
I believe you're correct, but I'm just going to pass that off to Justin because I know he knows for a fact.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. So the gas that's sold at the marina is the high grade, and they're selling the high grade because the police boats require that for their engines because they're the faster engines to go out and for rescues and whatnot. I believe it's in 96 grade, but I'm not positive if it's 96 or 93.
Okay, and then are we paying this high price that this guy charges for our police and fire boats?
No, the town purchases gas through a vendor, so it all goes into one tank. The town puts in, the police department puts in their gas, the fire department puts in their gas, and then the vendor puts in his gas as well and sells his gas.
All right, and then there's some type of settlement based on how much we put in, how much we used, I take it?
Correct. The current pumps and tank, it's just a spreadsheet that we're measuring. We're taking gas in, taking gas out. The old pump dispensers are tired and don't measure the gas as well as they should. Keep the log. They measure it the correct amount, dispensing and whatnot, but just they don't log it as well.
All right, well, thank you for that information. Now we know why our voters aren't using pumps anymore.
Yeah, just to clarify that, I have the information for last year, and I believe he sold about 20 to 25,000 gallons, if I remember correctly, this past year.
Well, that's a
Okay,
lot more than
thank
I
you.
thought.
Mrs. Leclerc, over to you. No question? Okay. Very good. Okay, so then we're at revenue. We're at the waterfront. Anthony is not there. He's running back. I see he's back in his seat. Very good. And, you know, I think we've addressed this, right? Beach tickets, parking, concessions. We'll revisit this before we vote. And while we're on revenue, on the marina, revenue, it's $752,000, boat dockage fee, winter storage, and so on, sailboat storage. Anthony, any further comments on this revenue?
Well, this is that same revenue we were talking about before. Depending on what point of the year we get the marina open, and if we entertain the idea of refunding or prorating, it would come out of this budget as opposed to 2020. So these lines would be reduced.
Okay, very good. Any questions on the revenue for the marina at this point? Okay. Seeing none, let's go to expenses on the marina, which is on page 255.
Man, Brenda, Caitlin, that popcorn looks good. Starving. You're killing me here.
Sorry, Jim.
Man, you got to share. Come on.
We have popcorn at every meeting.
Wow. Wonder where that budget's coming from.
I bought it myself.
Excellent. Love hearing that.
On Amazon. Bulk.
Love it.
All right.
So the expense side here, to Mr. Walsh's question, there's nothing I would recommend cutting here at all. There's a lot of stuff that could still be done at the marina, maintenance-wise, so I wouldn't touch any of these lines, other than the $50,000, which was already cut.
Any questions on the expenses? Going once, twice, moving on. Okay, we're moving on to Carl Dickman Golf Course. Mr. Peter Grace is with us. All right, we're on page 258, 259. Mr. Grace, any comments on the expense side?
No, I concur with the budget that's been presented.
Okay, Anthony?
No, I don't have any comments on this budget either.
Questions up from the board on the expense side?
I have a question. It's really under capital, but I don't know whether we can go there.
Go there.
Okay. Peter, sorry to keep you so long. but welcome. And Anthony, we're in a tough budget year, and I tried to talk to both of you offline in regards to the capital, about what on this capital list would be absolutely necessary and could not be put off for another year. And you both seem to suggest the chemical storage shed because of an OSHA violation that you had. So that was a pressing need, which I understand, because we don't want to have OSHA violations. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But you seem to suggest that 2 through 5 may be able to be pushed off if they needed to save money for another year. Is that correct?
That is also correct.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to confirm that. That's all I have. And just Anthony, in regards to, and Peter, you might not have been on the phone when we asked Anthony to talk about this. What areas, if the governor or the first select woman keeps the golf courses closed for for some reason, because of the COVID crisis, past July 1 into August 1st, what line items will you save on there?
Go ahead, Anthony.
The lines that you're going to save here really are on, I believe, some of the seasonal payroll for clubhouse, really the clubhouse workers. All the maintenance guys are still working. They still have to maintain the course, cut the course, and the special department supplies and stuff for maintenance is still going to happen. So really, I want to say between the two golf courses, there was only about a $40,000 worth of savings off the top of my head.
Thank you.
We have the list. It's in June it's 45 for H. Smith Richardson and 19 for Carl Dickman. So that's 64,000 in June, and then it goes up to almost 100,000 in July saving. And those are not cumulative, right, Caitlin? So you got to add those together, right?
Two different budgets.
Yeah, right.
Budget years.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Okay. Okay, we have revenue on page 21, but again, it all depends, right, Anthony? So
it all depends.
Moving on to H. Smith Richardson, page 262. Anthony or Peter, anything to refer to on the expense side?
No, nothing outside of what we just talked about.
No, we have a lot going on up here. Believe me, there's a lot going on up here.
Okay.
Which has nothing to do with the budgets.
What's that? You want to expand on that?
No, just the construction of the new clubhouse. I mean, the golf course is in great shape, but we're all closed down. We can open anytime you'd like to, but I understand why we're closed. And it is what it is, and nobody knows what's going to happen in the future, and things are looking good up here with the new construction of the clubhouse.
Okay. Mr. Walsh.
In regards to Smith Richardson's capital request, there's one item, this multi-pro 5800G sprayer. I had a discussion with both of you, and you seem to suggest that if needed and pressed by us or the town or other bodies in trying to save money, you could do without this for one more year. Is that correct?
Ironically, I tried to buy sprayers out yesterday, and it wasn't working well, and it was only a blown fuse. So it is working well now, so yes, we can pass on that.
Okay. Thank you, Peter.
Okay, any other questions on the expenses? Mrs. Marion, sorry, Sheila.
Marmion. Yeah, I don't know what a multi-pro 5800 G sprayer is. Could you tell us what that is?
Well, it's it's if you're an environmentalist, you're probably not going to like it, but it's a perfect thing to take care of. What it is, it's not a pesticide. I'd like to call it turf medicine, and it's just we put pesticides and fertilizers in to take care of the fairways to give us a great turf.
All right, so basically you can do without this. We're going to be in good shape with the existing one. We can maintain it, get it fixed if need be.
Yes, I'll put in for another sprayer next year. The same thing, but there's advancements. I bought this back in 2003, and the advancements that have been made are unbelievable. So I would like to get up to date, but we can survive without it this year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. We won't even go to revenue. Just know it's on page 21, and it will be discussed on 5. Okay. You agree, Anthony?
I agree.
Okay, that ends culture and recreation. Anthony, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your answers.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Anthony.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good night, guys.
Okay, we have one more budget to review tonight, and we have Mr. Dave Kelly, who's been with us every night, doing a fantastic job. Thank you, Mr. Kelly, for keeping our WebEx up and running. Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you okay. So on information technology, page 158. Okay. Okay, Dave, just a quick intro.
Sure. Just a question. At the top of the meeting, you said that you had the 5% or more change memos from departments. Did you get the IT one?
They were all part of the same PDF document, so they should, I believe it was the last page.
Yes, we have it. Can
Okay,
you see
so
this?
do we need to go through that, or is that okay?
Say that's okay.
All right. Okay, so this year's budget's not too different from last year's budget. I made some adjustments as described in that 5% sheet. Generally speaking, a vast majority of the IT budget pays for fixed contracted pricing on things. Our largest expenses are the wide area network, the fiber optic network for the town, the Munis bill, the Microsoft software maintenance bill, and then lots of other software. So most of our budget lines are fairly consistent year to year, with some annual increase that I try to guess at based on prior experience with each software vendor. In some cases, we're in a multi-year contract, so we know exactly what the cost is going to be in a given year. In other cases, it's not, and sometimes software expenses jump a little more than expected from one year to the next. But this budget it's fairly consistent with our prior years.
Okay, any question on the budget lines, and then we can go to capital. Mr. DeWitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris DeWitt. Quick question on the, did you say we'll go to capital or go to revenue? I'm sorry, because I don't want to jump. I have a capital question.
Yeah,
Well,
IT doesn't have.
Before we go to capital, I wanted to see if there's any questions other than capital.
Oh, I apologize, and then I'll defer my question to capital.
I'd be coming right back to you because I don't see any questions, so. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. So we had a discussion last night with the Board of Ed, and they were talking about buying some additional computers, laptops, or Chromebooks, I guess it is, for the kids to get through the initial crisis, if you will. They buy their computers separately than yours, right? So this budget that I'm looking at for capital, and I know that's for next year, right? But your budget's not impacted by anything the Board of Ed's doing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Anyone have any questions on IT?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Testani, go ahead.
Can I just dovetail on that? Jack Testani. I just had real quick on the Board of Ed and that question Mr. DeWitt just referenced on the Chromebooks. Has the town thought, or have we explored the possibility of combining the purchase or having one department, like let's say IT, take charge of purchasing a significant amount of Chromebooks for the purposes of perhaps, acquiring them at a lower price point?
Chromebooks, you understand, Chromebook isn't really let's call it a business grade computer like what we use in town. In town, we use Microsoft Windows computers. Chromebooks are being used for educational purposes. It's basically web-based applications that the students use. They're getting the Chromebooks, I believe, at about $220 a piece, which I think is about as low as you're going to get for a reputable brand, rugged Chromebooks that you would use in school anyway. So on the town side, we don't use Chromebooks, so we don't have any way of adding to their numbers. They're not adding to our numbers. We just don't share that technology.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testani. Mrs. Charlton?
Thank you. Can you explain to us how you manage the replacement of PCs and laptops? Are these done on a regular rotating basis after a certain number of years, for example? Or you do it in another fashion?
Yes, we're roughly on a 5-year replacement cycle. So we're replacing 20% of the fleet each year, roughly. And so that's about, if you see I'm replacing 104 PCs, well, I think we have about 525 desktop PCs in the environment. So we kind of, over time, roll them out after about 5 years.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Charlton. Are there any other questions? I'm seeing none.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Can I just give a shout out to Dave Kelly, who's been really amazing for our town, who has reprogrammed a ton of laptops from the library when they all got sent home, and reprogrammed them and allowed our staff here at Town Hall to be able to work remotely and us to rotate and maintain our office operations here when other towns literally just shut down completely. Dave was an integral part in us allowing us to do that, and also allowing us, our town bodies, to have these meetings. So I just really want to give a shout out to Dave Kelly, who has been amazing for all of us in this town and all of our elected officials. Good job, Dave.
Yes, well deserved. Yep, well deserved.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. It's working out great. This might be, we might have caught on to something here.
You do this all the time.
Yes.
Especially because they can't have any. Dave, hey Dave, they can't have any WebEx bombs, right? Like Zoom bombing.
No bombing.
Well, I'm going to trust that WebEx is a mature enough platform that's been around for over 25 years that they've hopefully prevented, thought through the security issues that would allow that to happen. On the other hand, our meeting numbers and such are not super duper secret, and you never know, somebody might be able to get in and do something, but yeah.
While I'm thinking about it, have we instituted security measures in place for that? Because there was a high school student just arrested in Madison 2 days ago for Zoom bombing into town placed Board of Ed authorized educational programming.
Yeah, well, we were looking at Zoom, and so was the Board of Education, and when all the news hit of that kind of activity, we just kind of made it a policy on both sides to not adopt Zoom at this time.
Okay, great.
Mr. Walsh, you had a comment?
Years on his budget, because for those of us who are around, this IT budget would take hours beforehand, and we put money into contingency. And you've really given us a lot of confidence, and your planning has been excellent, and your budgeting has actually been great as well. So I just want to thank you, because you have sped up the budget on your department by literally hours.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, I was in those meetings. I think at one point we voted for like a no confidence on the whole IT budget with the previous gentleman. So this has come a long way. So yes, we thank you. Now just a quick thing, Dave, to the board. We meet on Tuesday, the 21st is our next meeting, and the Board of Ed has a meeting too. So is that going to cause us difficulties?
I don't think so. I'm going to be running this meeting as usual. Board of Ed's webmaster is going to run theirs, and FairTV has worked out a way to capture both meetings simultaneously. So I think we're all set for that night.
Okay, thank you. And then a question for Ms. Bassi. Caitlin, on the 21st, is Hooker and Holcomb, are they scheduled along with Aon?
Hooker and Holcomb's on board. Aon is on board as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then Mr. DeWitt, we need to work on the rest of the nonprofits. Maybe we'll split them between that night. If they're going to call in, we'll have them go first.
Sure.
So we would meet them on Tuesday and on Thursday.
The only thing I'd like to say about that is, I think the questions that have been prepared and the answers that are coming back have been fantastic. And the Board of Ed meeting, I think, went great last night because of it, and I think this meeting went tonight was great. A lot of data. Maybe we should consider the questions for our not-for-profit friends, right? And I don't think they're going to be onerous, and they can go right to them. But if we have generic questions, it might speed up the process a little bit, right?
So that would go for any department. If we have questions we think that we want to get beforehand that we feel we want them prepared for, so they don't have to get back to us, that would be wise. I agree. Okay,
so Mr. Brown, I'll just say that, we didn't give any increases to any of the nonprofits at all. They were all kept level. Some of them are very low levels. And I just want to remind all of you that, when I was in the State House, we talked a great deal about how nonprofits do a hell of a lot more work than government. They're able to stretch the dollars much more efficiently than, say, for example, government. And so they service a lot of people for less money. So I just hope you'll keep that in mind. And they were all at zero, no increase at all. And they do serve our community in a lot of ways where we would have to pick up the slack either on our town level or our state level, which would be far more expensive than the way they do it.
Yep. We've been in agreement with that, and we've supported them in the past.
We brought in one tonight for almost an hour.
Yeah.
And, we went through their entire budget, and I think it's interesting to hear how people are being affected, and it's good to hear. So once we did one, I think it's fair that we do all.
It's unmuted.
I'd also like to mention that all of the not-for-profit documents, including their financial statements, their IRS designations, their explanations, everything that you've asked for in the past has been posted on the website and is available in the budget area under not-for-profits, because you have asked for that, and it helps you review them.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Okay, so look, it's 10:45. So we could do one of two things. We could sit around to midnight and sing "We Have the Revenue Blues" written by Laurie Charlton.
Oh, no!
Or we can adjourn.
Adjourn. Revenue blue? No, I'm
okay. All right, I think we will vote to adjourn. So can I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Charlton, seconded by Mr. DeWitt.
I salute you, Mr. Chairman. I salute you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.